Welcome to the Home Studio Hangout podcast, where we explore what it's like building, running, and working out of a home studio with your hosts, Joshua Matotek, Andrew Simmons, and many guests in different areas of the music industry.
And welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I am your host, Andrew, and here with my co-host, Joshua.
Hello.
Josh has a mic today, feeling fresh, feeling special.
Yeah.
We are here joined by Nashville producer, mix engineer, vocal editor extraordinaire, Mr. Tanner Ledford.
Oh,
How you doing, man?
Thank you. It's very kind. Yeah, I guess we stepped our game up with. I whipped out the mic and.
Yeah, dude.
You guys
Everybody's
are like,
just
we got a mic up today.
Everybody's stepping up their game today. Tanner, I'm super stoked to have you. Why don't you give the people just like, a small introduction of maybe some stuff that you've worked on and who you are in general, and we'll do like a deeper dive after that. Just kind of like what you do and who you are.
Yeah, this is like the name major hometown in college. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Hi,
yeah.
I'm Tanner Ledford. I'm here for audio engineering technology with a minor in music business, and I'm from Lakeland, Florida.
Okay, sick.
Yeah, that's my
that's the college
my short
intro.
list. Yeah. That's my college intro. My personal intro would be, I'm from Lakeland, Florida. I moved to Nashville in 2018 to go to Belmont. I did audio engineering there, graduated December 21, and now I'm doing music full-time, doing producing, mixing, and I've fallen into doing like a lot of editing. So for better or for worse, it's been mostly for better. So
yeah, I feel like
you
have a lot of very cool opportunities like on some really cool records because of like the vocal tuning, but between the vocal tuning, vocal restoration, restoration work, and also like mix prep work, all that stuff has been like got you some really interesting things with Joan and Valley, Brook and the Bluff, Bethel stuff. That's all very sick work to be able to, especially coming. When did you graduate, or when were you done with school?
Yes, I did graduate. Unfortunately, the Belmont thing is like the most successful people drop out before they actually get to graduation. I did end up graduating. I graduated in December 21, so I've been out for about 2 years now.
Wow, cool. That's that's a cool jump, I feel like, too. A lot of people don't
it was definitely a roller coaster for sure. I mean, I'm very much an idealist. I wanted to like be in full-time music by the time I graduated. So, I started to try to get the ball rolling in that direction by my second year at Belmont. But that didn't really work. By the time I got to, September, October, like a few months before I graduated, I was like, this isn't going to work.
Oh God.
What am I going to do? So I started applying to a ton of jobs. I think I ended up applying to maybe 30 or 40 different jobs in town, like music related. I mean, just like kind of anything. Yeah. And I couldn't get like a single interview or even reply a lot of times anywhere. And it was like, I thought this degree was supposed to like get me into places. Like this is supposed to be a top-notch music business degree. One of the best programs in the country. It was very disheartening. So like I just did like grocery delivery and like just weird side job things that like just barely got me by for, I don't know, about 6 months really. And then, a few months after I graduated was kind of when I felt some momentum building. That's when I connected with Alan and Steven from Joan. And that's when I did the first thing for Valley. But it was like that weird in between of like, okay, I see where this is going, I'm getting work, but I'm still like hella
it's-
broke.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I feel that.
I have no
That's
money
like
still.
the hardest place to be, you know? You were talking about how you were like doing food delivery and all that stuff, and then you started getting like the Joan and Valley projects, and then you're like, okay, well, like this is cool, but like I'm still poor.
Yeah.
And I feel like every time I've had something cool come up, I've been in the exact same spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it's like either I was like just transitioning out of a job at the time, or like I'm just going through a rough patch, and then you're like, well, I just kind of have to figure it out now.
Right.
Yeah, it's. I feel like everybody has those, especially earlier on. Like as a person who's self-employed, you kind of always have an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But the ebbs and flows are just a lot deeper and steeper, like early on. And so just like before, yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that right out the gate. You know,
Yeah.
the how sometimes it's like I gotta pay bills and I don't know when my next job is coming.
Right.
And,
And I have no savings either.
And you have no savings because you've been spending money trying to get all this gear and make your place look right and vibey, and you know, shit's expensive.
Yeah.
So then you have the other times where you're like, I'm flying high, man. I got the credits rolling in. I ain't got to work for nothing. And you know, you just got people bombarding you with stuff. You got too much to take over, and then it'll drop again eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely been the story of like, I mean, my last year, you know, like we were saying, like getting started was really hard. And then I definitely got into the swing of things and was feeling good, like kind of officially went like quote full time.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't really doing anything other than music before. But I kind of called it full time in August of last year, and it was like going good for a while, and then I had like one slow month, but then it like recovered, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit, but it was fine. And then I was pretty busy January, February, March, and then like April totally died off, and then May was dead too, and then it says June now, and it's July now. June was like pretty dead too, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
that's enough slow months to really stress me out and like make me reconsider. So like that's kind of been the season I'm in, or have been in the last few months, is like trying to figure out like, should I maybe consider, should I get over my pride and like start doing something else on the side just to like help my mental health. Like,
so me and Josh talk about this a lot. So Josh has something on the side.
Yeah, dude, I literally, like, whenever I don't have anything to do for the day, then my other job is to figure out another way to make money, whether it's something that'll help me out in the future. Like, I recently started making content again and just like posting YouTube videos, because I know multiple people who eat off of YouTube videos.
Yeah,
because
me
people
included.
will see people see the content and they're like, this is sick, I'm gonna try it. Then they try it, then they realize they can't do it, and they're like, who should I hire to do it? This guy, the guy who taught me how to do it, you know? And so I'm doing that again. I'm either writing.
I was gonna say, and to exemplify that, we just had there's this dude named Seth Goodwin on. He'll be the previous episode to you. And he goes by Velvet Ear, but he does the same like. He's in the same genre as you actually, which is interesting. Like, does a lot of like indie pop kind of stuff. And he like 100% eats off of, he does YouTube tutorials, and then they translate into one-on-one like client projects.
Yeah.
For people who are looking for that style of stuff, which is really, really cool. So he'll do like how to make a 1975 guitar thing or whatever, or like this is how I think he did like a Laney, like this Laney, you know, those couple of like Laney guitar tone types that people really like for songs. He's like, how to make those things. And then people are like, I like that guy. He does really good.
No, man, not again. Not again. Come on. Oh.
That was me. Sorry. He's like, I like that guy. He does a really good job. I want to hire him for a project. And so he's been just fully getting it, not all of it, but I think he said like 50% of his client come in is off of just like YouTube videos.
No, he
That's
said it was
awesome.
higher than that, buddy. He said that like 99% of his.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
It all comes from YouTube, and he
And
said
he's
like
been-
he basically just does TikTok just because.
Because it's like a feeder for the YouTube algorithm at this point.
Yeah, and he was
That's
like, I
wild.
just do it just because it's hard to grow on TikTok right now, and so yeah, like like being that you have like credits and all that stuff, like you could very easily do that, and people would be like, yeah, let's work, and so like that's what I started doing again. I'm terrible at video stuff. So that has been so much fun to try to figure out.
Yeah.
I just got DaVinci Resolve, and I have no clue how to use it.
Would
but
highly
we're making
recommend
it work.
DaVinci Resolve, by the way, Tanner, if you're not using that for video editing.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's free, and it feels more like a DAW to me than like Premiere, or it feels like a
Right.
video editor. And you don't have to pay for it monthly, which is great.
Yeah,
That's good.
It's very nice. And so yeah, if I'm not making videos or if I'm not like prepping for future projects, like I'll make like tons and tons of tracks just to keep them around for whenever like the session finally happens, and I could be like, what about this?
Right.
So if I'm not doing that kind of stuff, then I'm out just like delivering people's food. So it's been whatever, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
he's in
been a nice
he's in
system.
Atlanta.
It keeps me all busy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's like super easy to make money off of like anything, any gig based stuff like that in
Right.
Atlanta, which is cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, so where I have been, so this last few weeks have been pretty wild. I had been kind of stewing in that, like, should I do something else
Sure.
thing for a couple months? I was feeling burnt out from music. I wanted to be able to say no to more things. And I was like, I just want to do something like 2 days a week. So, when is this podcast airing? Is it like 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, cool. I can talk about this then.
Yeah, it'll be sometime in August.
Okay, cool. So, a few weeks ago, a friend called me, and he works at a guitar shop in town called Rumble Seat Music. Really
Yeah.
sick, vintage guitar shop. He's like, we just had a guy leave. We just need someone to do 2 days, like,
yes,
pays decent.
dude.
And I was like, cool. So
That's perfect.
I
and it's
started
great
doing
'cause
that.
You're going to be meeting people too.
yeah, it's been really interesting. So, I mean, I've been there for a couple weeks now, and it's been fun. It gets me out of the house, and I'm on my feet, and I'm around cool guitars, talking to people. The twist in the story was literally my first day working on July 5th. I got home, like got off at 5, came home, and then I started talking to my friend Matt Huber, and we ended up just we were just chatting, and then we ended up on the phone. And he was like, I think I need a consistent assistant now. Like, I'm at the point where, because I was doing a lot of his prep work before, or not prep work, like closeout work a while ago, and we've been tight for a long time. And he just moved out to LA a few months ago, and it's been like wild for him. So
Yeah, I've been following him for a hot minute. I think even probably before. It's been like a couple years at this point, like 3 or 4 years at this point.
So he's
been. I watched him move to Nashville, I think.
Yeah.
Like the first time. Yeah, and he's just been slow growth the whole time. I don't think there's been a lull in his career.
pretty much. I mean, yeah, he's always been great. I mean, he would say the opposite. He would say it hasn't been consistent, or
Sure.
I mean, that's how everybody is. But
yeah, big picture, you don't
big
see
picture,
the dips. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we ended up talking on the phone, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I need a consistent assistant. Like, I want to figure out something. Obviously, you're my first choice." So we're actually meeting like this afternoon to like kind of design a workflow and everything. So
That's
like, I was
awesome.
like, Matt, I literally just started this guitar shop job today. You couldn't have like told me this like yesterday.
Yeah.
Like where I like,
Jeez.
cause I would have said no to this guitar shop job. So, so I think
Build up some
by
extra money though.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to be working like 3 jobs basically for the next few weeks.
Yeah, dude. Go for
While I
it.
transition off of the guitar shop job, but hopefully by the time this episode airs, I will be kind of more in the full swing of doing like prep and closeout work for Matt about half of my time,
Yeah.
and then hand
And
off
if
the
it
guitar
doesn't-
shop job to someone else.
If it doesn't, I'll cut it out.
Sounds great. Sounds like a plan. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, no, that's sick. Well, in either way, you'll get to have that extra side income from the guitar shop job just to like pad, the savings a little bit. And regardless of everything else, it very much relieves stress. Just not having this consistent thing. Like for me, I did a thing because I'm in Greenville, so it's not Nashville or Atlanta. There's not like a studio on every corner that does kind of everything. So here, there's a lot less studios that have a lot of gaps. So what I've kind of done is connected with a bunch of studio owners. And now, because I work in more weird genres sometimes, they'll feed me clients.
Yeah.
From stuff that they get inquiries about. So I'll just get fed phone numbers from people and that generally will turn into a better client opportunity just because, they're already looking, they're already searching for something like that. And then I have access to, other studios and things like that too. So that's been kind of helpful, getting somebody to, feed things.
Yeah, that's it's quite the opposite of what I'm doing right now. Cause
Josh is grinding the producer.
I have nowhere
thing.
to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. So Josh got his studio kind of sold out from under him.
Not really. So basically, I moved to Atlanta to work with my homie at a studio that he had spare rooms in. And the artist that built the studio just moved the whole thing out to LA right whenever I quit my job to move in. Yeah. So we've just been kind of winging it since, and it's been fun. But I think I'm right now the goal is to try to get to Nashville.
Oh, sweet.
Just because there's way more music that's more in my lane out that way.
I was gonna say this is probably a really good for you guys to talk about the Nashville music scene and maybe talk a little bit about what you see from your perspective, Tanner, of the indie pop scene there in Nashville. I feel like over the last couple of years has been really coming into its own.
Yeah, it's kind of I'm still kind of navigating it a little bit, and because it is changing so much all the time. It definitely is Nashville's still at its core built on country.
And CCM.
So yeah, and a lot of CCM. So what's really interesting is as you become more established here and more connected and kind of climb the the ladder or whatever, the top of the ladder in Nashville is still country and CCM. So that was part of the reason Matt moved out to LA, was because he kind of got to the top a little bit of all the mixers in town and was just getting country work. And he's like, I want to be doing pop. So I need to go to a city that's built on pop, which is, LA, more so than Nashville. So, but yeah, I think what is cool about Nashville is, it is definitely very diverse as far as genres go. In the low to mid grade, not the label pro top level, it's very diverse. There's lots of different genres. There's everything, and definitely a lot of indie. And I think it comes from, there is a kind of low cost of entry. So, compared to a place like LA or New York or something. So a lot of people are able to come here and do music. The longer I've been here, the more I've kind of realized the flip side of that is that there's more music here than other places, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more better music. It's the proportion, the ratio of good music to bad music is just about the same as anywhere else. It's just that the quantity is so much higher.
Yeah, I kind of noticed the same thing with Atlanta, where obviously hip hop is huge here. Yeah. We're the number one city in the world right now for hip hop. And it's that's sick. I love hip hop. But the problem is that everything just kind of revolves around the whole send out beats or like you engineer the session. And
Right.
it's like, I don't really want to be a beat maker, and I also don't really like, I would like to be an engineer. I would know I would do great as like a hip hop engineer, but it's not something I could just like kind of hop into, you know, without
Right.
like having my own spot for people to come through.
Yeah.
And so outside of hip hop, it's like there's so much music here, but I have yet to find like one artist that like I really want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's this one artist, Eric DOA, who's like from Atlanta, but I don't think he really ever works here. And then I think another artist that I like might be here, but I have no clue. I got to reach out and figure that out.
Yeah.
But it's like there's like very little as far as like the quality of work, you know. There's a lot of bands that are just like for fun or
Yeah.
you know, whatever. And it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of at the point where it's like I only want to work on stuff that like feels like I'm, you know, helping everybody level up, you know.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think what's interesting about Nashville is, you know, there are a lot of people doing music, and a lot of people are doing it pretty seriously, or at least like want to be doing it seriously, or maybe think they're doing it seriously.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people taking, you know, like really trying to do it. But like, it's really hard to find people who have the right combination of like talented, and also organized and driven.
Yeah.
I've found that really hard here, and I mean, it's probably a universal thing too, but having that combination of right and left brain, where like you have the talent, you're creative, like the, you know, the products that you're putting out, the songs you're writing, all that stuff is there, but also you have like the head on your shoulders, the drive to like make it happen, make good decisions, build a team out, and really hustle, and have like, you know, the self-awareness to be a band leader and put together shows and gigs and arranging. Like, you have to have such a wide, diverse skill set to really make it happen on your own. And that is really hard to find. It's really hard to find artists who have all of that, even here in Nashville.
And even like learning branding and content strategy and the marketing side of things is also a whole nother ball game of like
Yeah.
internet based things that you have to know as an artist now too.
Yeah, you have to be savvy in so many different areas that like to really make it work, and it is so it's so hard to do all that. I mean, every time I talk to an artist, like an artist friend, I'm always like, I have so much respect for what you do, because I could never do it. Like, my job, like compared to yours, is very simple. Like, yes, it has its ups and downs, and I'm working for myself and all that, but like really at the end of the day, you know, I just post on Instagram occasionally, and I talk to people occasionally, and I, you know, fill up my schedule with things, and I send an invoice, and I get paid for like per project. Like, doing an artist thing I could never do it. I mean, having to plan shows and deal with royalties, and like you get paid for some things but not for other things, you're never getting paid enough. Like, you know, cranking out content on social media all the time,
Dealing with writers' splits and having to argue for percentages and things like that.
I mean, you're just, I mean, you know, fighting for breadcrumbs almost. Like, I could never do it. I always say I have so much respect for people who do, because it's very, very difficult.
Same. Yeah, it's so much. And you know, especially now with like TikTok being a thing, where it's like, great, now you have to like figure out how to be like cool social media guy, and you know, also write good songs that connect with people. And it's so much. And I don't think I could ever be an artist. I mean, purely because like, not even like when you're starting out, but like, because what if you do make it? You know, and then you're like waking up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, and then you have a press interview, then you have to go to a session, then you have to stop, then you have to go to another session, then you have to go do this at night. And it's like, like all these successful artists, like they're just running nonstop.
Yeah.
Like my homie who works with Lotto, he flies into Atlanta to work with her pretty often. And he's telling me, he's like, yeah, man, like she's like doing rehearsals for tour all day. And then like she gets to the studio at 9 p.m. and then we work until 3 a.m. And then she like gets up and does it all over again. And
golly,
it's like, that is insane.
That's crazy.
Miss me with that, bro.
That is insane. You're rehearsing choreography for like 6 hours. And then you stop, probably grab something to eat. Then you go to the studio and then you work all night. Like that is unreal, you know? And like that's just what she does every day.
Yeah.
And all these people are like, oh, you know, she's only famous because like, you know, she looks nice. And it's like, no, like she's famous because she works like that.
Right.
You can't, you know, like it's insane. Like the work ethic that you have to like be at the top as far as being an artist goes is unreal.
Yeah. I mean, I wake up, you know, maybe 9:30.
Yeah.
Start working around 10. And you like by
Bro.
5, I'm like, maybe I'll work till like 6 or 7, but after that, I'm done. Like,
I didn't get out of bed until
hanging it
10
up.
this morning, dog. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not, I was answering emails on my phone at 9 o'clock this morning, and I was like, do I want to get out and get a coffee at 9:30? Or do I want to just like sit here until 10 and then post stuff about the podcast? I don't know. Yeah, I can't imagine doing all that stuff. But talking about content stuff, you recently, I think it was this year, started your own podcast.
Yeah. It was in March, I think we started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Session Notes, right? That's what it's called?
Yes.
Great name. Great name.
Thank you.
I
Thank
actually
you.
didn't know that. I apologize.
Yeah,
To be
great.
fair, I'm pretty bad at most of this stuff because Drew will be like, hey, man, we're going to be hanging out with this dude. This is his name, and you should like check him out. And then he'll send me like 2 other people too. And then I don't check anybody out. And like, I'm thankful if I remember to follow everybody on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I went through, like, I like checked out your Instagram, but I did not even notice that you have a podcast, even though it's your first post.
Oh, that's right. So I do have it pinned still. That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm not offended at all because I'm the same way. I'm really bad about like following through on that kind of stuff.
I'm so
Yeah.
bad at social media anymore. But like
Yeah.
it's okay because I feel happier when I'm
True.
bad at social media.
True.
You know,
True.
I'm not sitting there like, oh, so and so is working on this, and they're
Yeah.
doing that, and
Facts.
then like before you know it, like you're just like, man, I'm a failure. You know?
Yeah. But podcast wise, dude, how's podcasting going for you, man? You enjoying it? You
Yeah.
feel like
it's
you've been doing some pretty cool episodes.
It's been really, really fun. Yeah, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, just things being, like having more free time because not as many projects, and also, I mean, it came out of the beginning of the year where I was working so much. I had just this like hunger to be creative in some way. Like I missed like creating for myself and like having like a passion project. So yeah, I got with my friend Henry Park. We've been friends for a long time. We used to be roommates, and he's an incredible producer, mixer. Like, yeah, just every time he sends me a demo, I'm like, I don't know how you like, I could never do this. I'm
Yeah.
jealous of you. But yeah, so we started it in March, kind of out of the feeling like, trying to figure out where we belong in the music industry as like Gen Z people. Like I just turned 23 like 2 weeks ago, last week or something. So it's really interesting kind of working at this level and being so young because most of the people I work with are like, you know, at least 5 years older than us. So and they're great and I have great friendships and I love them, but like it's totally different seasons of life where, you know, I'm still like living and working out of my college apartment that I've been in because the market it keeps going up and I can't get out.
Yeah.
And you know, my friends that I'm working with are, you know, are married and have a mortgage, and like, you know, it's just a totally different season
It's
of life.
super
So
weird. I'm not too far off from you. I'm kind of like in between the age groups that you're talking about, but like it's very weird because like I'm 26, and so it's one of those things where it's like my career is like just getting started, you know?
Right.
Like whenever I was 23, I don't think I actually knew what I wanted to do in music yet. You know, I think I was still working on metal records. And so like I'm finally at this point where it's like, okay, I can compete, and I'm starting to, you know, make connections and like make things happen. but then like I feel like I don't have anybody else like in the same exact spot as me. Like all of my friends are either older than me and they're like established, or like I have a few friends that are like younger than me and kind of just like having fun with it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's very weird. It's very weird. And then it's also weird too because like we kind of came up at like the timing was just like piss poor, you know? Like last year I had so many people telling me like, dude, honestly, like you should probably just like move to LA and go be an engineer because like engineering work is everywhere and it pays really good. And now like I'm seeing all these people who are like, yeah, man, our studio like can't book us as much because like the labels don't want to pay. They're just using their own studios that pay engineers $16 an hour. It's like making $16 an hour in LA just sounds like a really, really bad time. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like really like I was just talking about it with my friend Lee earlier. I was like, that's like really, really depressing. You know, it's like out of all like the studio roles, like the engineer has been like the most consistent, you know?
Right.
And it's like to see them being devalued and all that stuff, it's just it's miserable, you know?
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
like production is changing so much too. And like mixing is now changing as well. And like it's just weird. It's a very weird time to you know, be starting out in this.
Everything, it is a completely different industry than it was, you know, 4 years ago even. So that's kind of part of the reason we wanted to start it is we wanted to be like a young voice for people who are younger than us. And I kind of felt a little bit I felt kind of in limbo of like I'm not a millennial, but the industry around me is very millennial heavy, but I don't like, I can do that stuff. I can kind of conform into that. But I don't really want to.
Yeah.
Like I want to be my own thing. And if I'm doing this kind of work as young as I am, like I want to like, I kind of wanted to flip the script on myself and say like, instead of trying to fit into this older group, what if I start to like try to figure out what it means to be my age in doing this, and start something new. So, and I was very inspired by Sam Moses's podcast, Attack and Release Show. I listened to that. I mean, when I was getting started, I listened to it all the time.
Shout out Sam, incredible mastering engineer.
Yes, he is. I basically send every mix I do to him if I can. But yeah, so I loved his show, and it was very helpful for me. But I also felt a need for something like that, which is lots of practical material. Like they're not just kind of, I don't know, pandering for views or whatever.
Sure.
Like really helpful for young people. But instead of kind of from an industry veteran, what if we do kind of that same thing from a perspective of people who are like kind of just starting out and figuring it out as we go along?
That's kind of like what we had the same conversation where like at first it was like maybe we should like do this podcast to like help people out because like there's so much bad information about audio.
Yeah.
Like how many posts do you still see about mastering to negative 14 LUFS? You know what I mean? And so like that's like what we started as, and then we were like, yo, this is boring and we kind of hate it. And then so we were like, why don't we just like talk about life? You know?
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of people out there that are in our same exact position, you know? And
our aim is a little bit, I would say, like in a similar area, maybe a little bit older than you guys' aim. Purposefully.
Yeah.
So ours is like for the people who are later getting into audio, that it's like, and it really, I think we do a good job of highlighting people who are more behind the scenes or don't get the recognition that that they should. So like we had like last week, like I told you, Seth, he's making a living doing YouTube videos and mixing and producing indie pop. Like that's awesome, and nobody knows who the heck he is, really. You know what I mean? That's great, but I think people should know that that's an avenue that they could take, right? 100%. We had a tracking engineer who worked with King Von and Pooh Shiesty and Lil Durk and like a bunch of that crew in Atlanta. Won a Grammy for working with, I think it was Durk had a verse on
Nas record.
On a Nas record. Yeah. And so he won a Grammy for that because they won best hip hop record. And so like, that's really cool. Nobody knows who the heck he is. He's just like a chill dude that lives in Atlanta. He's great. I really wanted to highlight those kinds of people that are like, you know, the people that don't necessarily, they're not mixing Taylor Swift or songwriting with Beyonce or whatever. Like, you know, like they're not like the huge names that everybody seeks after, like your Kenny Beats, those kind of people who are like, you know, search words or whatever.
Yeah.
I would love to have those people on, sure, but I'm not going to say no, but I would have very different questions to ask them than every other kind of person would, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much turned into like this natural, like, let's just talk about like life in the music industry and like what it's like to be at this, like, we're not starting, but we've been doing this for a little bit, but it's like this mid-level that's really weird where it's like some of us have jobs and we're working full-time, so we're kind of working 2 full-time jobs, or like we're just like me, I'm just grinding it out on the music side of things and just praying to God that I can keep my bills paid and stuff. And like, you know, like I think everybody can relate to that a lot more from just like a listenership and like, you know, it's the stuff that I would want to hear.
Yeah, and like there's also like this very weird thing where I feel like nobody really talks about it, but I'm starting to see it being brought up more often. But like, there's like this level where it's like you're good enough that you should be working with better artists, but then you also don't want to fill your schedule with just like pay me work because it doesn't get you anywhere. Like you spend all this time, there's always way more revisions. The artist typically isn't that great. And it's cool because it's like, great, I'm able to pay my bills. But now like somebody else is talking about how I worked on this record that I'm not even proud of because the artist isn't like good enough, you know? And I feel like that is like a really, really weird place to be that like a lot of people end up in. And that's kind of like where I'm at right now. And so it's just like, yeah, like I would much rather like sacrifice pay if it means that, you know, I could work with someone who's just like a little bit higher up on the food chain, you know, someone who's going to promote the music a little bit more, or maybe get on a cool tour, you know,
or work harder for the music.
Yeah. Like it's just very weird, you know?
Yeah. And the way like rates play into that, like rates has been something that was one of our like topics when starting the podcast. We're like, we don't want this to be taboo. Like we want this, we want to be able to talk about this and like try to, you know, I'm all for like community over competition, like abundance mindset, like instead of scarcity mindset, but it's really hard to have those perspectives when you're just starting out and you're trying to make it work. So, but what's interesting about rates and like working at a higher level, it feels backwards because like if I want to be doing things that I am excited about, it feels like I should charge less. But like long term, if I want to be working at a higher level, like I should be putting myself into that range. So like I should almost overcharge because
you should.
Then I'll be like that quality. Even if, I mean, if a label is looking at your rate, even if you're, you know, working at a label level, if you're only charging $200 a mix, they're going to be like, oh, well, that can't be good.
Exactly.
So
I was just about to say that. Like, I literally know people who price themselves out of really good work because the label was like, well, we have a bigger budget, so we're just going to go ahead and work with this person.
Right.
And so it's like, figure out whatever, like figure out what like mid-level professionals are doing. Like in like mid-level meaning like they're still working with big artists, you know, but it's like figure out like what people like Matt are charging, right?
Right.
It's like if you're trying to do that and you're working with labels, charge a little bit less, but not too much less. Like you don't want to half their rate because halving the rate is just going to be like, oh, well,
having quality and perception.
Yeah. And then if they are concerned about budget, then whatever, just say, hey, how about if I spec this and we'll figure it out, you know? And it's like, that's like something that was like really, really weird, you know, to learn, where it's just like technically like they have to spend that money and it's either going to be on you or it's going to be someone better than you. So, you know, you might as well just ask for it.
Right. And I think what is weird being young is kind of the opposite of what you just said. Like they're either going to spend money on me or they're going to spend money on someone who's worse than me because they're charging less. Like because that's like in college, especially at Belmont, it was really difficult trying to charge anything for doing anything. I mean, like because I wanted to do it seriously, so I was like, yeah, I'll mix a song. I don't know, charge $100 or something for it, like something really low. But why would somebody pay me $100 to mix a song when they can literally just walk down the hall in the dorm and someone will do it for free on like little 4-inch Mackie speakers or something? It's really difficult because at that age and in college when people don't have money, people don't really have the, I don't know, like the self-awareness, I guess, to like look for better quality and like invest into their art. They're just more looking for a deal. And I think starting out at that age, it can be really difficult to navigate because, that's when you're doing it professionally, that it works the opposite way. So it's hard to break out of that if you're just starting out in college and being young. So, that's the kind of stuff that we wanted to talk about in our podcast is like helping young people navigate into the more professional field and getting out, like, separating themselves from the people who are doing it at an amateur or like hobby level and saying like, it's okay to charge a rate. It's okay to say no to stuff. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to have mix and production agreements, like contracts. Like if you want to do it seriously, like there's no, it's never, it's never too soon to start doing it seriously.
After this past year, I'm never doing anything ever without a contract again. Like, it's just kind of to that point where it's like you get burned enough times and you're just like, all right, like it's time that we, do it properly. It's like, I'm sorry you have to sign this, but 2 seconds of your time is going to make sure that the project goes way better.
Right. Yeah. And, getting that all out of the way, like, here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how we're going to split it up. This is when the payments are due.
Yeah.
Having it all on paper. I love that because it just gets it all out of the way at the beginning. You don't have to worry about it again, hopefully.
Yeah.
And you can just focus on the work and have fun.
And it's like once you have like a booked enough schedule, like just get a good lawyer and they'll handle everything for you. Like
right.
That's really the way to do it.
Yeah, I have a friend who's in town. He's a great producer, and he has agreements and stuff. But he had a project that ended up being really terrible, and they were basically trying not to pay him anything, and he was like, all right, well, if you don't do this, like, I'm gonna basically sick my manager after you, and like you might get a lawsuit. I don't know.
Yeah. Jeez, if you want to play that game,
right? Yeah. If you're trying not to pay me, like, that's illegal.
Try me. Yeah. That's a big try me. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think it's growing up, having a production agreement and learning how to use that kind of stuff to everyone's benefit, not just to your benefit. Right. Not making a one-sided agreement or anything like that. Understanding that is there to protect everybody.
Yep,
that's growing up in the music industry.
Yeah. Definitely.
And there's also like this push-pull kind of thing too, where it's like, if you're getting work that's basically on par with the kind of work you typically take, like, it's perfectly fine to ask for your full rate or whatever. And then it's like, if something comes along and you really, 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 really want it, then just offer to do it for free or like spec it or whatever. Because if you get it, then you're going to end up making way more money in the long run. That's something that like me and Drew are both in the Live with Matt Rad Discord. And, there's like so much good advice in there from guys who've been doing this for as long as we've been alive. And it's really, really cool kind of seeing how, how things should operate and like how people who are successful actually operate versus, like what YouTube tells you or like what people on Facebook tell you, and it's like a lot of times like it's way different, but it always just comes back to the simple fact that like, you won't be successful unless if you're easy to work with and you do really good work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to have that combination of kind of like what we were talking about with artists. You have to have a combination of being good at what you do, but also, not being an asshole.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
no, if
100%.
it doesn't matter if you're making the best mixes in the world, if you're horrible to work with, like,
Yeah.
you're not going to have a successful career.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's sometimes that is another hard combination to find, like people who are really good at what they do, but, don't have an ego. That can be, of course, now I'm here thinking like, well, I'm good at what I do and I don't have an ego. So,
I mean, yeah. Gotta check your. That's those times that you check yourself, right?
right. It's just ironic.
You just like make sure that you're like, am I an asshole? I don't think
Right.
so.
AMA.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
But
whatever it is.
no, I would love to hear more about your time at in college because it's kind of fresh for you. It's fresher for you. We've had a couple different conversations with a couple different people that have done the music school thing and I did the music school thing and had a less than stellar, and most people that I know dropped out after like 2 or 3 years. But I don't think anybody that we've talked to so far went to an actual music school other than maybe like 1 or 2 people that finished.
Yeah.
Most people went to like some private, art school, liberal arts
Right.
school that had a music program. That's
Right.
what I did because it was 2009 and I didn't know any better. So I didn't know what to do. So yeah, how was Belmont? How was going to like that school? And did you learn a lot? Do you feel like it was worth it and I think this could probably be directed at more people that are coming up through high school right now and having to think about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, first I will say that on our podcast we did a whole episode about it because Henry and I both went to Belmont. That's where we met.
Awesome. Yeah.
And
you don't have to go into any deep detail. You can kind of give us.
Oh
the
yeah.
overview.
Well, I'm saying that because like kind of to check myself because we literally talked about it for 2 hours, I think, and like I could go on and on. So
sure.
If anyone listening is really interested in that conversation and like, for literally, I think it's an hour and 40 minutes and you can check that out. But like here, I'll say, I don't think the, Belmont got me to Nashville. And that was invaluable. So
Okay.
if I had, looking back, if I was bold enough, if I had the balls to do this, I would have just like left Florida and moved to Nashville and gotten a job and figured it out.
Yeah.
Because being in Nashville has been, like just incredible for what I'm doing. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I had stayed in Florida, by a long shot. So having a school like safety net that got me out of the state, got me to Nashville. I had a place to live. I had food to eat, all that. Didn't have to pay rent really. I mean, I guess I'm like about to start paying rent for my time in college once student loans kick in. But yeah, that was the most valuable thing that Belmont gave me is that it got me here when I otherwise wouldn't have. As far as the like material, like the actual material curriculum that I learned, the dollar value there is just not there at all. I don't think. I mean, my day to day, I think 90% of what I do, well, I'll say 70 to 80% of what I do, I learned from Matt, hanging out with him while I was in college at his studio like twice a week, just watching him work. Maybe 5% from my classes at Belmont, and then the other has just been what I've picked up on my own. So like I think Belmont and other schools can be, they kind of pitch themselves as giving you a shortcut into the music industry or giving you a leg up. And it's just not, that's just not true at all. I did audio engineering there. I think, they're technically one of the best in the country. I think they're AES certified, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. But, the program was designed 20 years ago and they put so much money into it at that stage. It's really hard to kind of steer that ship into where things are now.
Yeah.
So it felt like it was a really really sick program in like 2006. But
Yeah, for sure.
like working in studios, large format consoles, a lot of out of the box stuff, like barely using anything digital. But that's just not how the industry is anymore. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 units of one summer online class that talked about what it's like to do like what we're all doing now. And that's it. Everything else was like, just stuff that like could be useful, but it isn't really, there wasn't a lot of practical stuff. I think there's a lot of foundational stuff. And then there's a lot of stuff that just isn't really relevant anymore for most people. So, yeah, that's where I say, I think the best move would be, just to get to a music city and make it work somehow. And that is way harder than going to college.
Yes, it's been
is.
very hard.
Josh didn't go to college, really.
Yeah, I didn't go to college.
Yeah.
I took some online courses because my parents had like a very small like college fund set up. So like I found like the minimum that I could take to like use that money, and like that was all I did. And so yeah, it's like really hard, dude. Like I started, so like the timeline was like either like I could have went to like music school and ended up in like a music city and like done music the whole time, or like I could have done what I actually did, which was like work at car dealerships and like try to save up money and try to move. And then you deal with like not being able to make enough money, not being able to move. On top of that, like my girlfriend, to make it all easier, she also works in a creative field, which isn't very easy to do in Pittsburgh. So like we were both literally just like grasping for straws from the time that like we were 18 to like the time that we were 23. And then like we started figuring it out from there. And it's just like just now, like last year, like we finally were able to get a cool opportunity and move. And then now we're trying to set up for the next move.
Right.
And like, yeah, it's just like a lot, like in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, it's way easier if you're just like graduate high school and you move to LA, but it's like, that's not feasible for a lot of people, and like a lot of people don't come from that kind of money. And it's like, I know I didn't. I know a lot of people that didn't, My friend Nick, he wasn't able to move out there until he was like 26 or 27, And I think like the most important part is just like having patience, but also like being aligned with your goals and still working towards them. Because especially when you're younger, it's really easy to get frustrated. I get frustrated a lot. I know my girlfriend does, she'll be like, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm very good, but I'm not getting any calls. And it's like, well, that's just kind of how it works right now. The job market's insane. She just applied for something yesterday where when she applied, there were 10 applicants, and this morning there were 2,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like it's actually insane right now. And like it's like that for everything. It's like that in the music industry too. And
she does graphic design for reference.
Oh, cool.
And she's hoping to eventually get into a game studio one day.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So that's
but yeah, it spans all of the creative industries, right? It's not like, I feel like that's not just a conversation for like music industry stuff. Like it's everything.
Yeah. Dude, it's insane, And so it's like, yeah, I mean, on one hand, I'm really happy that I don't have student debt, but then like the impatient side of me like wishes that I did,
Right.
Because it's like, oh, I could be working on much cooler records right now. But ultimately,
yeah, I mean,
if I did it personally, I would have went to school. I would have done the whole thing. I would have thought that I was the best, and then I would have just failed immediately. Because like I thought that I was gonna be a metal mixer until I was 23.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously I'm not a metal mixer. I was never good at it, and now all I want to do is write and produce pop songs. So
right. Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting because, like, for me, no one really cares where I went to school, and if I I'm not a person that needs to put my diploma up on my wall in a frame to get work. Like like a doctor. You walk into a doctor's office and you're like, oh, Johns Hopkins, that's great. Like,
Yeah.
cool. I feel safe here. You know,
Yeah.
like
I might not die.
right. You know, for
Yeah.
us, it's like no one really cares that I went to Belmont for my degree. I mean, as long as they like what I've done, that's all that really matters. And also for me, what has really concreted me in kind of my stance on like Belmont is, on the flip side, I did get the degree, you know, because you talk about like, it's good to have a safety net. You know, it's a 4-year degree. I did it. I got out of college and I applied to 40 jobs and I couldn't get anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted
like-
to talk about is you exiting college and entering like life. I feel like that is probably more telling of the collegiate experience than anything else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I applied to a ton of different jobs, just like, you know, low level, like, you know, entry level data, like what mindless jobs at like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, like, you know, all those big organizations are in Nashville. I was like, I want to do something in music. I mean, I couldn't get anything. I got one interview and it was with a company that I didn't even apply for. They like scouted me on Indeed and it was like just a random like business management company that like maybe a third of their clients are like artists or bands. But I just felt it just didn't feel right. It was like it was administrative assistant. It was in person. I was like, if it was remote, you know, I could maybe do that.
Sure.
But, like,
Was it with
was
UTA?
like no, it was I don't even remember what it was called.
Because
Just
I
a
know they have
small-
an office in Nashville. They have one in Atlanta too, and they
It was a
started
small,
doing
like-
comedy and I think sports also.
It was like a small family owned kind of deal.
Gotcha.
But you know, they offered me a salary. I think they offered me 40,000, and I was like, okay, well, you know, that's money. That's money in my
Yeah.
pocket. I still didn't feel really. I just felt unsettled by it, and I was like, if I take this, I want to feel like I got a win out of it. So I was like, I'm gonna counter offer slightly more and basically let that make my decision for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, hey, you know, I was really looking for something that was more like 45 just because of cost of living here. And like,
Yeah,
you know,
which-
it's hard to live off of 40,000 a year
Yeah.
in
Especially there.
Nashville. I mean, so, you know, you can do it, but I was like, I just want, you know, 45, expecting that they would say, well, what about 42.5? And then
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay. They straight up just said, yeah, no, sorry, we're not comfortable doing that. Good luck on your search. Like, there's no conversation. It was just
Jeez.
gone.
Dude, these
so I was
employers are
like-
nuts right now.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, that kind of makes me feel better because it almost feels like I dodged a bullet. And then about a month later, I saw that they relisted the job at a lower pay with more responsibilities that they had told me originally were going to be like along with a promotion later down the road. So
Sounds like you did dodge.
I
a bullet
definitely
on that.
like did dodge a bullet. Like, you know, if I had taken it, I would have, you know, a little bit more money in savings by now, but like I wouldn't
Less
have had the
time.
availability to take on things that I was able to do in spring of last year. Like, you know, if I hadn't kind of just been widely available and started working for some producers in town and like Ryan, like just starting to get some chops, like I wouldn't have been prepared or available for when I ended up on the phone with Alan and Steven from Joan
Yeah.
and landed that album. So
Yeah. What did you do on that album?
I did basically all editing and then mix prep. So
Cool.
they just sent me their Logic session whenever they were done with it, and then I just like combed through it, fixed everything that needed to happen, and
Yeah.
then like prepped it, exported it, and then sent Matt a prepped Pro Tools session.
So I would actually like to talk about that. It's like, what is generally, and maybe you can go into as much depth or not, however you want to, but like mix prepping a record, and we'll even say mix prepping a record specifically for Matt. What does that look like for you generally? Because
Yeah.
I don't work with I don't have anybody prepping my stuff,
Right.
but I am like toying around with the idea for like, and then, you know, a couple years down the road, I think I'd
Yeah.
like that. I would love to know what that kind of looks like for you as a person that does that at that level.
Right. Yeah, so most of the mix prep stuff Like honestly, I guess all of it has kind of come through Matt or by way of Matt or for Matt. So, the Joan record, Alan and Steven and Matt are like best buds, and they have been forever. So, that helped kind of make it an easy decision for them to bring me on to finish out things for them, because I was already basically integrated into the team anyway. So, so for them, they just sent me their session. Like once they were done with all the creative decisions, they just sent me it. I like fixed comps. I tuned vocals, aligned vocals, kind of went through, edited any instruments that were out of time, fixed any like weird flex time artifacts, like just fine tooth comb through the whole session, get it ready for mix, make it like just fix any issues, more like kind of like quality control. And then once that was done, they approved it. I like exported out, and then I had Matt's mix template, and then I would just put all the WAV files into his template, go ahead and route everything the way it needs to, and then just zip it up and send it to him so that when he opens it up, it's just ready to go. He can just immediately start mixing.
Bro, you do God's work, my friend. You do God's work. That is the stuff that I only dream of having one day. That's literally all the shit that I'm like, yo, I there's a part of me that loves to do it because I like the analysis of like grinding through all that stuff, and like a clean session is just beautiful to me. But also it's one of those things like if you're on a crunch, especially like a more of a time crunch, it's one of those things that's like, I wish I could just not do all of this stuff.
Yeah, I know multiple people that are doing like really big things, and it's all because they got in and with vocal editing and like mix prep and stuff like that.
It has
like,
been like a
path.
really awesome like shoehorn almost into working with some of my favorite people. I mean, I've loved Joan for a long time. I mean, we I have a band with some friends back home, and it's kind of how I got into production and got connected with Matt. But I remember several years ago when we were working on our first EP, like I listened to Joan on my like inspiration playlist, like the Portrait EP. I mean, I loved them. And then same with Valley. When they came out with the Maybe record, I was like, this is just the greatest thing I've ever heard. The Phone Call in Amsterdam was like my favorite song I'd ever heard. So yeah, like coming into this editing role really has been a shoehorn into these teams that are already built out. Because I'm never going to mix for Joan because that's what Matt does. And like, even on mastering side, like I'm never going to master for, using Joan as an example, I'm never going to mix for Joan because Matt does it. I'm never going to master for Joan because Sam does it. Like probably never going to produce for Joan because they self-produce mostly. So, the only spot there's room left for is somebody who can come in and make everybody's lives easier. And that's editing. So it has been really, it has been a tool to like get me into rooms and onto teams that I could never even dream of.
Yeah, that you would never do before. Like
it also doesn't mean you couldn't do that other stuff for the next Joan.
Right.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like,
and like it's also kind of leaves the door open. Like maybe I could do something. So like Joan, they just came out with a stripped version of Super Glue, and we've gotten tight over the last year, and like we're just kind of buds. So I was like, I'm just gonna put some stuff on this just for fun. You can say no, I don't really care. So like I added like a lap steel part and like some other layers, and they were like, okay, yeah, that was sick, cool, yeah, let's keep it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, now I have like an additional production credit on or whatever on that song. So I mean
and that's really what it is.
It's a great opportunity.
Just kind of like getting all the little credits, and then they'll turn into bigger and bigger credits.
Yeah, and it's not like, I don't want to be editing and prepping, for my entire career. Like really, I want to be mixing full time. Mixing is the thing that I love the most, and I think it's the thing that I'm best at. But yeah, having editing be this vehicle to one, it took me into full-time music, and it's gotten me onto these teams that are just amazing. I mean, even though it's not the most fun work sometimes, and it's not what I want to do long term, I mean, it's been an amazing tool. And even now, all that time editing has kind of prepped me to be in this position where I have been able to like kind of grow with Matt, where he's at the point now where he's like, I want to bring you on part-time and pay you a lot of money. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And like, that's really like the same path that I see everybody taking. It's just people don't like to talk about like their humble beginnings, you know?
Right.
Like the one dude in that Discord I was talking about, his name is Matt Beckley, and like he ended up like interning or like assisting at the studio. And this is like whenever vocal tuning was still like very expensive. And the dude was like, hey, all right, I'm sick of doing this. I'm going to teach you how to use Melodyne and you're going to tune my vocals. So he said something like, it was like 4 or 5 years he would sit on the studio couch with a laptop, just tune vocals all day. That's all he ever did, but he got really good at it. And it got to the point where he was like, well, you seem like you know what takes are going to tune best, so why don't you start cutting vocals? And like basically it ended up snowballing to the point where like he vocal produced on songs like Havana, you know? And it's like... that was the number one, and it's all because he sat on a couch for like 5 years tuning vocals, you know. And it's like you just have to get your reps in, and you have to like, you know, just slowly work your way up and just be easy to work with and do good work, you know. And like that's really all it is. And then you have to have a lot of patience.
Right. Well, what you said about humble beginnings, like I think, you know, some people don't like to talk about it. Like that's kind of part of why we started our podcast, is like, we want to talk about them while they're still happening. Like, kind of one theory I had was like, why would anybody take advice from CLA about what it's like to start a freelancing business in a home studio in 2023 post-COVID? Because he doesn't know anything about that. He's probably one of the least qualified people to talk about that.
He only knows how to pick out the front row seat on an airplane.
Right. It happens. It happens.
He's number one, dude.
So
Black box,
we
white
wanted
cone,
to, kind of our theory was like, we are the experts in being, in what it's like to be 22, well, you know, like 20 to 24 years old, starting out in music, like in a home studio, freelance in this really weird economy. Like, we're the experts on that. So like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how much it sucked going through school, and how much it sucked that I couldn't get a job after paying for my 4-year degree, and like, how it's been hard to get mixing clients, and how I started doing editing and how that's worked. But even though it looks like I'm really busy and I'm doing a lot of great stuff, like that doesn't mean I'm like doing super well financially. Like,
it doesn't mean you're shopping for a new car, you know?
Right. Maybe like a year from now, but you know, you gotta have a little bit of a runway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait until, you know, I'm able to tell the guy at the Mercedes dealer about how I actually recorded this guy singing a cover of a love song so he could play it at their wedding. And it was so bad that when I looked him up on Facebook to find the video, I realized they didn't play that song at the wedding. I still think about that a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I still think about, he was a really nice guy. Like, just the fact that he was willing to, like, I hope he still showed his wife just so his wife could be like, wow, you really actually did that for me, and you don't even sing. That's crazy, you know? Because, you know, I definitely appreciate, I would appreciate that if I was her, you know?
I want to touch on the aspect of the patience aspect that you guys both kind of touched on for a second. I think there's a big because of the way socials are right now, and the way like you see somebody post literally one TikTok and then like the next week they're doing whatever, right?
Right.
You know, there's like, I could probably think of 4 or 5 different instances of literally that, where somebody's done that, and then the next week they're getting a major offer, or, you know, they're getting this massive payout, or their song went crazy viral and they're making a bunch of money or whatever.
Going on tour internationally, like
exactly
playing on,
like,
you know, like Jimmy Fallon or whatever.
Yeah, it does. Like, it's that I think those people get pushed to the top because they're so visible, but those people are also hella the minority of the situation. Right. The people that actually, like, especially in the music industry, the people that actually do the work and push and are consistent are the people that make up the vast majority of the music industry.
Right.
It's somebody like Matt, who moved 3 different times in order to pursue what he wanted to do. It's somebody like you, who got out of college, didn't have a job, said, I'm just going to do this thing, and just went for it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, there's like a bunch of other instances of that where it's people just like, they slowly build a following of some kind, and then their music starts popping off because of that. But it took them 10 plus years of just grinding it out. And I hate like the grind hustle culture mentality. There is like a small bit of it that's like needed, but there's also that with balance.
Yeah. I think I almost say, like, with the grind and hustle, I feel like the better word is grit.
Yes.
Like, you know, because I think grind and hustle, like, what you think of, what's associated with that is exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because you're of like being overworked and like putting in more hours than you have and kind of being unhealthy. Grit to me is like having boundaries and like being aware of your own limits. And just being patient and like and doing the work day after day.
And not
in excess, you know.
Yeah.
I like using the word consistency, because I feel like that's a pretty good, like, because like you in order to be consistent, it requires boundaries, because you have to be able to say no to the things that you need to say no to, and yes to the things that you want and need to say yes to. Yeah.
And you know, talking about the like people who blow up on TikTok, like, I think the way I always think about that is like a Bible verse, and I'm not, you know, like, you know, faith, and that's a totally different conversation.
Sure.
Of, you know, how I feel about that currently. But you know, I have that background. So what I always think of is like, the weed and the rocks, about like talking about the roots, like, of faith, like a seed planted in shallow ground, it might grow really quickly, but you know, it doesn't have the roots underneath it to support it long term. And I think that is true. You know, with people who blow up on TikTok and kind of suddenly, you know, they're opening for Taylor Swift or whatever. And I think it's a little bit too early to tell what happens to those people long term. You know, because we're only
no, it's not.
We're only, well, I guess so. You know, we have, you know, we're like 2 years into this. I'm talking like really long term, like trying to make a sustained career out of it. And when I think about it, I kind of see 2 paths. One is, you know, in 2 years, like everybody just forgets about him, or they end up in a really, really bad deal with like a label.
Yeah. That's typically how it works. Like, so there were two artists that blew up like on the early days of TikTok that I really liked. And so the first one was Arizona Zervis. He had that song Roxanne. There's 1.3 billion streams on Spotify.
Wow.
He signed a crazy deal right off rip, and then he couldn't stream as well, and then it took him forever to do anything because he was in the process of getting dropped and then buying his masters back. And then the other person is Trevor Daniel. The same thing basically happened to him. He has 1.4 million or 4 billion on Falling, and then the same thing happened to him. And then like
he
crazy deal, dude. Like he signed a record deal, and then between that and the stream money, he was like buying a new Mercedes every month. It was insane. And then I just saw that another artist I really like, Eric DOA, he had said that like he really, really wants to drop music, but he's kind of just stuck. Like they aren't letting him release music, which I don't even completely understand, because he has been the most consistent out of all of them. And so I don't understand what's going on with that. But that was like another one of like those Interscope deals that they were just like handing out constantly. It felt like especially during the pandemic, they were just like, we're just going to scoop up a ton of artists and see if we could have a big winner, you know? And like, it's just really unfortunate, like seeing that, you know? But yeah, that's why, like, I don't know. I'm not a firm believer in TikTok. Like people like Gail, I think Gail is going to have a fairly decent career, but like she's also been with that team since she was 15 years old. You know, like this was like years, like ABCDEFU was like years in the making, you know? But it's like, if you blow up real quick and then sign that first big deal, like there's a good chance that like you're going to have a bad time with it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've, you know, talked to people who have deals on big labels, and they're like, you know, it's great. We get to tour. We're going international. We have a great following. Like, it's really fun, but I'm never going to. The deal is written that so that we will never be able to recoup like the investment. Like, we're only going to live off of our advances basically for the rest of our lives. Like, we're never going to make any money on, you know, royalties or anything. It's just what the label pays us as our salary, and that's like, that can be a pretty depressing reality.
Yeah, dude, it's insane. Or even like, you know, I have friends who are like selling out crazy venues all around the world, and it's like they're still just like barely breaking even on tour, you know? And it's like, that's not even the label's fault. That's just like the cost of like trying to make sure you have a killer show that impresses people, so you establish a fan base that cares and keeps coming back, you know? And like, that's insane. That is absolutely, like, imagine selling out a show and you're like, okay, cool, everybody's paid, I have no money, let's go home, you know? Like, that is crazy.
Right. And stop at Taco Bell on the way home.
Yeah, let's grab Taco Bell, guys.
For sure.
Only one each, though.
Yeah, exactly.
No Supreme.
You can't Supreme that stuff, dude. That's over budget, man.
That's over the per diem.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh, yeah, that's depression laughter right there. That's what that is.
Right.
So Tanner, we're going to talk, let's get a little bit more nerdy about stuff. What are you using right now? So let's give us a rundown of the desk and or your setup. I would like to know.
Like literally my change for the podcast, or are you talking about
no,
like
just
generally
like,
what?
Generally what you got. So like, what pre's are you using? What speakers are you using? What are you using, like a UAD setup or what?
Right. So I am using things that are very not fancy at all.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because it's very cool that your stuff sounds so good and you're using
thank you. That's very kind.
Solid. Yeah.
That's very kind. And you know, I'm also kind of, I can be self-conscious about it. I've had conversations about that. So yeah, I just have an Apollo Twin X. Like, I don't have any outboard stuff. You know, I have a Behringer 8-channel ADAT pre. It's like $200. So like, I have it if I need more inputs than two. I used to have a Focusrite 18920, but I just got rid of that because I just didn't use it. Yeah, I have the Twin. And then I just have KRK 8 G4.
Solid speakers, though, to be fair. Like, of the KRK line, the 8s are actually really good.
Yeah, they're not bad. My biggest issue with them is their self noise is horrible. Like, I don't know if it's just mine, but like, as soon as I turned them on for the first time, I was like, that's not normal.
I have a pair. So I have this studio spot that's at my house, and then I have another spot that I use for like more tracking and like songwriting stuff. And we have a pair in there. No, the self noise is just bad.
Yeah, it's very bad. I used to have the KRK 5s, the G3. But I moved to the 8s because I was like, I just needed something with actual low end.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really like this conversation because I do want to get new monitors soon. And
me and Josh have talked about this for me as well.
Yeah, like, I really need to. It's a super important investment. You know, I mean, it's probably one of the most important investments, especially if like doing mixing. Other than, you know, treating your room, which is probably probably equally as important. I've treated my room pretty decently. Probably just about as good as I could, being like in an apartment. So I have my bases covered there. I also use SonarWorks to kind of get things that extra 10%. Anyway, I really want ATCs, the SCM 25As.
Yep.
And
I'm so happy, man. I'm so happy.
Like,
look at this, dude. We got a good speaker lover. Because like, if you said anything other than ATC, PMC, Neumann, or Amphion, maybe Amphion, I would be like, man, this guy sucks.
He'd have clowned you.
I was like, man, he has no clue what he's talking about.
Right.
I hate this guy. I hate this guy.
I am pretty like firmly ATCs. Like, I mean, I've heard some PCM pulse code modulation. PMC. I always get mixed up.
Yeah.
I don't love them. I haven't heard Amphions, and the Neumanns I didn't love, but I mean ATCs are just just absolutely crazy.
They're great speakers. They are great speakers.
Great speakers, great, and the 25s are great for like the size room that I'm working in, which is not huge. It's still near field, but they sound amazing.
There is I know a couple people who bought 25s, and I'll have to ask them where they got theirs from, because both of them were able to kind of like negotiate a really good price on them.
Yeah, you can get them used, and they just came out with the Mark IIs.
Yeah,
so a lot of people are getting rid of their Mark I's right now for like $7,000, which is pretty dang good.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I know a dude who bought his for like $6,500 new.
Yeah,
like that's pretty sick. I haven't heard of anybody getting PMCs for that.
Doesn't Seth use ATC stuff?
Yeah, he's on that. He's on a CM25s.
Yeah, ATCs are amazing. I've thought about jumping to like a midway speaker until I get there.
Don't bother.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, the reason I feel any kind of pressure to do that is like totally self-conscious, where like people aren't going to hire me because I have yellow speakers, whatever, but like I'm not going to waste my time on a mid-level speaker where I have to take it takes like a month or two to really get familiar with new speakers. So
and then they all
like
have their own
I'm fine with
problems.
what I like. I know my speakers really well. I've worked on them for several years now, so like why would I jump to a temporary solution when I could just save up for longer?
Exactly.
Keep doing good work on speakers that I know really well until I get to something that I want to be on like long term.
So me and Josh had this conversation about me the other day, because I have Yamaha HS7s. I've had them for forever. I hate them so much. But the problem is I know them so well. Right. And so the conversation he and I were having was, should I bump up to, like you said, like a mid-level speaker, maybe like the $1,000 to $2,000 range, or should I just full send it and get something in that upper mid range that I actually will take me until like way further down the path of my career as a mix engineer. Right. And I think we landed on what did we land on?
Use 226s.
Yeah, PMC 226s.
Yeah,
which are like very similar to the similar but different to the ATC's ones you're looking at.
So like, that is like a massive problem. Like, so I'll have to add you to the Matt Rad Discord, because like there's so much knowledge in there about monitoring. And so what ends up happening,
ATC guys there too.
It's like the three speakers that everybody really uses is Neumann, ATC, and PMC, because they're all pretty neutral. So the idea is that you take a neutral speaker and put it in a well-treated room, and you're going to get good results. Like it's the easiest way to make sure that your room doesn't suck. I say Amphion because personally I really like Amphions, and in a good room I like how weird Amphions are. But it's like, what will end up happening is people will buy speakers like Footprints, where it's like they buy them because they see everybody using them and the bass response on them is great. But then you run into awful room modes because of the the side firing subs on them. Yep. So it's like, great, you just spent $300 to $4,500 on nice speakers, but they sound terrible, and now there's holes in your mixes because of it. And same thing with like a lot of Genelecs. Like your only real option with Genelec is the 1 series, and they're so expensive that you'd be better off just getting SCM 25s. And then like it's just this reoccurring theme where it's like every single brand, like there's good speakers in the mid-range, but there's very few that actually excel. Like I don't know what the reissue or the update is of the KH120s, but it's like those speakers kind of suck. The KH150s are pretty good. Like they're one of the few like $3,500 for a pair of speakers that I've seen that like actually perform well. But it's like at the end of the day, like I got rid of my Focal shaped twins because I was just fed up with them. They're super high distortion.
Yeah.
I could get okay mixes with them, but it's like I bought a pair of Neumann headphones and now it's just like my mixes are 10 times better than what they used to be. And I'm mixing on headphones, you know? So like I'd recommend just getting a good pair of cans. I love the NDH30s. These things are sick. If you're a fan of ATC or Neumann, then like you'll appreciate the fact that they aren't blaringly bright like most headphones are. Or get Audis or whatever, and then just like do that until you could afford really nice speakers, because that's currently my game plan. Next time I move, I'm going to get cheap speakers.
I think my philosophy on like monitoring is, you know, after a certain point, like, you know, as long as you're above $200 to $300 used, I think you're in a good spot as long as you know your speakers well enough and your room is treated really well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can, if you have ATCs in a 8x8 room, 8x8x8 room with no treatment, it's going to sound like absolute crap.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to be able to distinguish anything.
Right. It's not going to matter that you have $10,000 speakers because you're in a box. And so I think that's my philosophy is like, know your speakers really well. Don't waste time on a mid-level speaker if ultimately you want to go high level. And just treat your room as much as you possibly can. And also I started using SonarWorks in the fall, I think, like Sound ID.
Dude, Sound ID is crazy.
I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, but as soon as I did it, I loved it, and it took a while to get used to it too.
Yeah,
but I love it.
It's so much better than old SonarWorks. I used old SonarWorks. I hated it. It sucked. Yeah. You could hear the phasiness. Sound ID is way better. It's definitely not a Trinov, but like it is so good. I use it with these because sometimes my brain still wants a little bit more sub information, and sometimes I want a little bit extra high end. So what I do now is I will like if I'm producing or like writing whatever, I keep it off just for the sake of it, and it saves on ear fatigue. Then when I mix, I flip it on, and then once I get towards the end of the mix, I turn it off, so then I could focus back in on the mid range, and like it's just been awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I've really loved it. I think a big thing for me is just referencing and having a good mental reference to what things sound like. So being able to jump from headphone to headphone and also monitors and have like a similar profile is I think really useful.
Yeah.
Talking about headphones, like I have like a pair of AKGs, KT40, and then I have like some old Sony MDRs, and that's it. But I actually, maybe this is a hot take, I actually love checking mixes on AirPods.
Yeah.
Like, I do. I also do.
I'll do a mix, like I'll do 80% of a mix on my monitors, and then at 80% I'll like route AirPods to them through loopback and check it and do tweaks from there. And
you can route Okay, teach me how to do this right now. You can route AirPods through loopback.
This is a disclaimer. This is just like everything else I've stolen from Matt. So he could probably walk you through it better. He actually has a reel on his Instagram about how to do it. But basically, if your AirPods are connected to your Mac, in loopback, you can add them as a monitor source and then just route them to, one of your like virtual device outputs in loopback, like the pass-through thing.
Yeah.
And then in Pro Tools or whatever you're using, you just set your output device to Studio Loopback, I don't know. That might be what mine is named, Studio Loopback. Just the Loopback pass-through device.
Just do the Loopback pass-through. Yeah.
Yep. And then you can just set up a bus where you can like just send your audio off of your master or something to like output. I think I have mine set at like 7 and 8, and it routes it to my AirPods when they're connected. So I used to use like the Listen to receiver app and everything. And
I was gonna say I know people that do that.
That's what I used to do. It worked okay, but there's a lot of latency and it's a little bit clunky. That's really useful for like doing a car check occasionally if I want to do that. But yeah, anyway, I love mixing on headphones, and having that workflow makes it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now I'm having to bounce stuff and then just like check it.
Right.
And then, yeah, it's just annoying. Or making like having my AirPods connect and then you can send the output of Pro Tools to your AirPods, but that doesn't always work either. Because Pro Tools and Logic and Ableton are all finicky with like Bluetooth sending to headphones and stuff like that. So.
So doing it, basically, you're doing the same thing, but using loopback as the vehicle for that, and there's no latency, and it works consistently.
That's super sick.
Bro, you're changing my life right now. You're changing
Yeah,
my life right
It's
now.
amazing.
I'll be honest, like after I got these headphones, like sometimes, like if I'm not using Sound ID, I'll do this thing where I'll have too much bass. And then sometimes I will let the vocal be a little bit too like boxy sounding in the low mids.
Mm-hmm.
But like ultimately it's not that bad because that used to be my issue. I used to have no low mids and then I would have no like 2K in the vocal. And it's like that, like I feel like that's something that everybody goes through where you're like, oh, I hate low mids, I hate high mids. And then like you have these holes in your mix, but like it sounds good enough, you know?
Right.
And now like I'm in the phase of like embracing high mids and low mids.
Right.
So sometimes
I'm
I'll have
in
way
the,
too much and it kind of just sounds like a weird, like a very well done demo. But like overall, like I realized this one artist that I work with, I would send him like the production demo and then typically he would give me notes and then I would send him the first mix. And be like, cool, yeah, I'm going to listen again tomorrow. And then he just never lets me know. So like we've been working for like 2 years now and he's just starting to drop music. And I realized I have like 10 songs that I got to like spruce up a little bit because he never gave me notes.
Right.
And also like, you know, my skill set has changed a lot over the past 2 years. And so I started going through them and it was so cool because I just ran through, I did 2 mixes in Ableton, 1 in Cubase, and just flew through the mixes. 2 of them were done without Sound ID. 1 was done with Sound ID. Because I just keep it, like in Cubase, the control room lets you put inserts on your monitors. So I just keep it on there. And I didn't even bother referencing the mixes anywhere else before I sent them. And he was like, dude, these are all sick. And then I just checked them out this morning finally. And I was like, yo, these are actually really good. Like I'm finally having stuff translate where I don't have to listen to it in multiple places. And it's been, dude, it's the best $650 I've ever spent in my life.
Yeah. That's a really great place to be in where you don't have to do the car check every time.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I mean, and for me, that I think that has come from just like being like really like dogmatic about referencing. Just I think that was something that I was just lazy about before. And like, I know what I want in my head, but when you're in the weeds and getting in the mix, like by the end of it, a lot of times you can end up way off and you listen back to the reference, you're like, oh wow, okay. Now I need to undo a bunch of stuff because
you're talking about like reference tracks, like having a song.
Referencing music
just having,
that well.
Yeah. What I really want to do next iteration of the rig is I want to have a separate line out that goes to a monitor controller so then I could just press one button to flip back and forth between my reference and the mix. I saw Bob Horn doing that and I was like, that's sick. And then I found out every other big mixer does that. I was like, I should probably do that because even though like I don't say that I'm a mixer, it's like a lot of times like when you're working with indie artists as a producer, like you are the mixer. And even if I'm not working with indie artists, like you still want to send out the best mix you possibly can. So I would love to have that just to make sure I'm staying on
cool idea.
Yeah, it's pretty sick because then since it's a hardware out, it's not going through your master chain. So you don't have to worry about that. And then if you're in a DAW like Cubase where you can
Sound ID on the master,
Sound ID is still going to be on my output. So it's pretty cool. And so I really, really want to do that.
Well, in that same vein, like I was really close to buying the Slate VSX.
I heard a lot of people talking it up.
Yeah, it seemed like a really great solution, like for like another reference system. You can and also being able to mix like anywhere. the thing that hung me up on it for the longest time was that you can't run it system wide. So I'm like, what's the point? I can listen to my mix in a different room, but I can't reference anything to it. Like, so what, what's the point?
Yeah,
I'm still
I agree.
flying blind. But they just came out with an update that they have system wide now.
Ooh.
So you actually can like run Spotify through, the whatever rooms through. You can run your Spotify through Stephen Slate's Tesla now.
Yeah.
So you can actually compare. And
that's pretty sick.
That has been tempting for me. That has kind of changed my mind on it, and where I could see myself doing that. I think I like mixing on monitors, so I'm not really like too keen on like getting into headphone mixing.
I'm not gonna lie.
If I were to, I probably would go Slate VSX at this point.
It's really hard to get used to it. For the first probably 2 months of being completely on headphones, first of all, like I was used to really high distortion monitors too. So like I was setting effects levels because I'm like, oh, this is going to translate great. And then I would take it in the car and the vocal would sound like it's dry because I feel like I can dig so much further deeper into the stereo field now that like it's really easy for me to not have enough reverb or enough delay. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is your center channel. My center channel was way too loud, just ridiculously loud. But I think that's just like a common thing with like cheap monitors. Anytime you get to a nicer, cleaner speaker with a better I'm
like distortion, like low distortion or whatever.
Well, yeah, like low distortion, but like a better imaging. Mm-hmm. You'll kind of deal with that where like your center channel will just be way too loud because you're not used to having everything so perfectly in phase.
Right.
And so yeah, that was like the only thing that like really kind of sucked at first. And then since then it's just like I'm like finally used to it, but I can't wait to go back to speakers. I much would rather work on speakers.
Yeah, agreed.
It's also way more comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bought these because I tried Audis before and they are so heavy. It feels like you took like a sleeping cat and put it on your head because and then they're like so heavy. They just kind of like hang on they don't clamp down on your head. They're just kind of hanging there. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And so
for hours and hours and hours.
But then you start looking at other headphone brands and like there's so high distortion. Like I have a pair of R70s that I used for years and I looked at the distortion profile of them and almost all the low end you're hearing is just distortion. It's not even low end, And so it's been really cool. I'm going to keep these forever and still reference on them because hearing down to like 30 hertz is crazy.
You've been down there. You've used them for a year or so at this point.
Almost a year, yeah.
Yeah, so like using something for a year, you're going to get used to it. It's like the reference, like the thing that you're talking about, Tanner. Yeah. It's like
I'm just afraid they're going to make me bald up here.
I mean, that's fair.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's why I wear a hat.
That's where I say like I love mixing with AirPods because there's there's no weight. Mm-hmm. They're not as like fatiguing physically, but also like if you really think about it, it's really interesting that we're living in a time where like AirPod Pros, I don't think we've ever lived in a time where there's as much of a universal reference for like literally just everyone in the entire world.
Yeah,
because
at least in America.
Yeah, at least we were just talking about that before you hopped in.
Every car is different, all the preamps are different, every room is different. Like so, you're thinking back into the 70s with hi-fi setups, they all sounded different. Yeah, all the cars sound different, everything sounds different. But like AirPod Pros, like there's never been like a bigger sample of people listening to the exact same sound.
Yeah, because people that have Androids use AirPod Pros.
Yeah, so I'm like, why wouldn't I mix on AirPods? Because like that's what like the plurality of people are actually listening to these mixes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I actually don't think we finished you talking through your room either. We got hung up we got hung up on speakers.
I could go on and on.
Leave it to me, dude. I'll derail any conversation.
Josh is the monitoring fiend.
I am.
So I have KRKs. I want to move to ATCs.
Yep.
I think I could. I'm planning on doing that in the next year, which is very cool. What else? Yeah, I mean, I have treatment. I have left, right, and a cloud for treatment. It's a 6-inch panel or 6-inch frame, 4 inches of 703. So
Nice.
you get a little bit of that air gap. And just some other treatment here and there.
Mics, any synths or anything like that? MIDI controllers, keyboards, whatever.
So I just got this mic Tuesday. It was actually kind of convenient that we had to postpone because this was supposed to be here like Tuesday morning before, and it came late. I was like, crap, I wanted to use this.
Yeah.
So it worked out. This is a Earthworks Ethos. It's basically, I mean, I haven't even heard it yet. Technically, I'm just
Dude. It sounds great. It's a little brighter than a 7B, but it doesn't have nearly that low mid bump.
I want one.
Yeah. Matt used it on our podcast, and I really loved how it sounded. It mixed really easily. So this is great. This is a new addition. I also have a Slate, the
classic,
whatever it is, ML1. I also have. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I have an upright piano right here, and it's mic'd up with the ML2s, a pair of those.
Oh, nice.
And they're really great. And then, like SM, like 58, 57,
sure,
that kind of stuff.
The ML2s, that's like the second time, because I think Seth even was talking about like he used those for some stuff. Do you feel like they capture well? Because I'm always with some of those mics, like I've used an ML1, and so it took me into using it personally to like be like, okay, like I get it, I like it, it's cool. The ML2s, do you feel like they capture the same or better, specifically for like tighter things or more dynamic things?
I think they're amazing. I think it's ridiculous that they're only $150 each. Like,
yes, that's crazy.
I think what's really interesting about them is that they're extremely flat. So like, if you're not using any processing, it sounds like very natural and like sterile, which can be really useful sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and just they're very, very cost effective. You can get a pair for $300. Like, so you can do stereo anything. Like, so
that's pretty crazy. And you can you can match pair with like the software or whatever, or mismatch pair intentionally.
Yeah, it gives you so much less flexibility. Honestly, I don't use the processing, the modeling very much. Really? For the ML2 or the ML1. I think they sound really great on their own for a lot of stuff.
I used to have an ML1, and I started doing like null tests and stuff to see what it was doing, and it never sounded that great. You know, whenever I was using the processing, there was one C800 model that like sounded natural.
Yeah.
But like everything else just kind of like sucked. Like I didn't like any of the U87 iterations. I didn't like really any of them. I think I used like the 251 from one of the packs, and then like a C800.
Yeah.
And that was about it. And then I sold it, and then I got a tube mic, and then I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. But I still really miss having like a transformerless microphone.
Yeah.
Because like there's still times whenever I'm like, this is like way too saturated for the song, you know? And I have a JZ BH2, which is transformerless, but like it is so harsh. Like that's kind of like the trade-off though, right? Like you get a transformerless mic and like, sure, it's going to be more harsh because there's nothing to calm it down, but it's like, it is so harsh that the only time it's ever sounded good is if I purely pick the signal chain based on how many tubes are in line with it, you know?
Right.
And it only sounds good on certain voices. It works great for hip hop. It's almost like it gets close to like that C800, like fast high end, but like it's really hard. So that's currently like my next purchase is definitely going to be like a cleaner condenser mic again, because I kind of miss it, you know?
Yeah. I have been really excited to get this because I've had the ML1 for a while and the ML2s. ML2s, aren't good for vocals because they're very sensitive and not good on like plosives and stuff. And they're like tiny. They're only like 3 or 4 inches long.
They're super small.
And the ML1 can be good for stuff that's really, I like the ML1 on like really breathy stuff, like really soft, like where you can really get like sensitivity. Honestly, I really love how an SM7 sounds. It is consistently like the easiest mic to mix for a vocal, I think, for me. I don't know why. I just really like it. It's just the way that the high end gets tamed a little bit. Like it's not like it's a little bit slower. It's almost like what it's almost half mixed to me in my head. Like I actually I've kind of come around and I'm like, I think I like dynamic mics on lead vocals for recording.
Like my favorite vocal mix that I've topped it now, but probably like my second favorite vocal mix was just like we were like drunk one night recording hip hop songs and we just used an SM7 and like the speakers were still on.
Yeah.
Whenever he was cutting the vocal, and I just like RX'd it and I took Spectre and did a high band at 10K, and then I just like ran it through like the slate like CL1B and like the vocal was done, and like a little bit of spectral shaper for the upper mids, and it was great. And I think about that a lot, and I really regret selling that mic because I kind of stopped using it, and then now it's kind of like I wish I still had one.
Yeah, there's something about the little bit of a softer high end on the SM7 and even like the SM58 that like once you boost it in post, it just ends up really nice. I don't know.
That's like
especially when using something like Spectre.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about like you have like microphones that sound good, and then you have microphones that sound good with EQ. And I think that's like the biggest reason why like people don't like U87 AIs as much as like the vintage ones. They just don't take EQ as kindly. Like it's hard to tame that harshness, and that's the thing that I love about my Fluid 840 is that like I can EQ the hell out of that mic and it still sounds fantastic. So I haven't had that microphone suck on a single voice yet. It's more like a style choice for me. It's like if I want less saturation, then I kind of need to get a different microphone.
Well, and something else I've been thinking about with production is a lot of times it can be really difficult to have to overdub lead vocals, like especially if you're starting with a scratch and you produce the entire song around a scratch, then all the decisions that you've made in some way are based on that scratch vocal. So I've run into problems where like we recorded on a 58 and then we got really used to the comp and really liked it, and then we overdub with the ML1. It's a totally different character. The take isn't the same and you're like, I just feel like it lost vibe. So I'm kind of figuring out areas where you can get things really right at the beginning, and I feel like ideally for production I want to like eliminate overdubs. Like I want every decision to be like a permanent decision. Yes. Because it really is kind of a domino effect. Like or like a Jenga tower almost. Like you're building it up, and if you end up taking something out and then replacing it, it's really hard to fit something back in that actually like works. Without compromising like the entire rest of the production. The best that's advice I ever found got the SM7. That's why I wanted to get it, is because it's a great scratch mic. It sounds really good, and like it works totally fine in a final.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's moldable into a final product.
Like we were saying, it takes EQ really well.
Yeah, for
sure. Especially, I'm interested to see how this does on production, because it's like I'm really not pushing gain very far on my pre at all. So
it sounds really, really good. Like I think I'm gonna buy one of those now.
Yeah.
But, like what you were talking about, like how your goal is to not overdub. Like the best advice I ever got was like, whenever you're cutting the vote, like if you're in a session where you're like writing, treat the scratch vocal like it's the main, because if you recut it, it's not going to be as good. Right. And there have been probably like 4 songs ever that I've recut the vocal and it actually turned out better.
Yeah.
And so now like I just do that for everything. Like there were multiple songs on the Olivia Rodrigo record that were cut on an SM7, and you could very obviously tell that she was cut on an SM7 and like the microphone was like right up to her mouth. And but like it's fine, you don't care about it, you don't even notice it, because like the song is that good. And on top of that, like Mitch McCarthy's like very quickly becoming my favorite mixer because like he knows like when to like really push things that aren't like sonically perfect because it makes everything feel the way it should. And I think that definitely had something to play into it also. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like you just have like you could talk about mics all day, but it really comes down to like how are you going to get the best performance? And it just so happens that like a lot of vocalists end up singing better when they're actually holding the mic.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like sitting on the couch, holding the mic by the stem and just like head down, just vibing. Like you're gonna perform way better in that really comfortable environment than if, I get my boom stand out and have the mic upside down hanging from it and it's a condenser and I have treatment up and like headphones and you're like okay, I'm going to sing now.
I think even me
it's
and
so much
Josh,
more raw and organic when it's like in the moment. Like
me and Josh had a writing session one time. I think when we did that song, we were cutting as we were writing.
We
wrote for like it's like a hip, like a pop punk kind of hip hop beat thing. I don't remember even which song it was, Josh.
It was Giving Up.
Yeah, it was Giving Up. That's right. We were in a co-writing session with like me, him, artist, and two other guys, and we were literally just like as we were writing lines, artist was cutting, and then if we changed a line, he immediately recut it the exact same way, and then by the time we were done writing the song, we were done with the song.
I mean, Lee's also really big on that too. Like
that's
we
the
don't
way Lee likes to work.
Like we don't have the artist sing. Like if we're writing with the artist, then we try as much as we can to get someone else to sing it, just so they don't overthink it too much, because you don't want to give them too many chances, because like there's something magical about like an artist like reading the lyrics, understanding the lyrics, and singing it for the first time. Like most of the time, I find like the first take is the best take, and it's just like, that's like where the editing comes into play, where it's like, if you're a great editor, then you'll always make that work, and like 70% of the takes I use are typically the first take, because it's just like setting the artist up for it and like talking about how the performance is going to go and all that stuff. And then they just hit it, and it's typically better.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's like a whole thing that I could probably talk about for hours, is like the psychology behind getting good takes.
Yeah.
Like I don't important. Like if an artist keeps messing up, it depends on who they are. Cause some people just flat out get frustrated, but like if they mess up, a lot of artists, when they're feeling insecure, they feel like they have to explain why they messed up, but really they don't actually know why they messed up. So what ends up happening is they waste a bunch of time by being like, oh yeah, I just didn't like hit that note the way that I wanted to. And so instead what I do is, as soon as they go, oh fuck, I just spacebar asterisk and just punch them in again. And because I find like the less time that they have to think about it, the better the performance.
Right.
You're on Pro Tools, aren't you, Tanner? Or
Pro
Logic
Tools,
or kind of both?
Well, I guess Pro Tools, Ableton, and Logic at this point.
Okay. Are you mixing in one, or are you producing in one, or what?
Yeah, so I'm mixing exclusively in Pro Tools. Vocal editing, at least in Pro Tools. I do some instrument editing in Logic. Also, a lot of edits I get in are just Logic sessions, so I just work within it.
Gotcha.
I used to produce in Logic, and then I got really sick of it and frustrated, so I moved to Ableton this year, and it has been amazing.
Ableton's been fun.
So me and Josh, I've been on Ableton for a hot minute. I think ever since Josh has known me, I've been on Ableton.
Yeah.
I have the duality workflow of I produce in Ableton with all my creative stuff. I always produce in Ableton, and then I get analytical and very hypercritical in Pro Tools.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
Yeah.
So I like that workflow personally. It works for me.
So like I had learned Pro Tools and I was using it, and I got sick of the update plans, and because I let my plan expire, and to reinstate it would have been like $300. Well, the cross grade to Cubase was $325, so I switched to Cubase, learned Cubase really, really, really well. But like the problem with Cubase, I don't find it the most like inspiring DAW, like to write and like start songs in.
Same for Pro Tools
I got
for me.
Ableton. Then this year I decided, well, I've had Ableton for like 3 or 4 years now, but I never really did much with it. Like I'm just going to learn it. So I've just been like learning as much as I can. and seeing how far I could get in the process before I'm like, it's time to export. And depending on the genre, like I've just been like taking it from like writing all the way to the master in Ableton. It's been really, really fun. It's been challenging, especially because like my vocal production process typically involves like tons of throws and stuff like that. And I don't really like doing that in Ableton, but like editing and vocal tuning and all that stuff is still 20 times better in Cubase and Pro Tools, but it's been fun.
Yeah. I love Pro Tools for mixing and for editing. Doing any kind of like trim editing is a pain in the pain. Yeah, I can say ass, right?
Yeah,
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I've said much worse things already.
Right. I just had a moment of like, wait, am I talking to like my mom or something?
Hi, Mom.
She probably will listen to this. Hey, Mom. Yeah, I hate doing like, you can't like just highlight a couple bars on a track in Logic and hit delete, like, and that drives me crazy,
dude.
And there's no like like the playback head is also the edit head. There's only one. You can only select like if you're playing back in Logic, you can't move. You can't go anywhere else.
You can't separate timeline and selection.
Yeah, it's
or timeline and playlist selection. That sucks.
So like if I'm playing back a song and I know I want to chop out some silence that's a little bit ahead or behind, like I can't just go over to it and highlight it and cut it out. And it is such a workflow killer in Logic. It's stuff like that drove me out of it for production. But Ableton has been amazing for production. I really love
so much fun.
I really love how, I mean, it's so much more efficient than Logic is. And I think it is a little bit more limiting.
Sure.
You know, like you don't have, infinite buses and stuff, but what's been really fun with that is like, it kind of forces me to do things in a simpler way. And like, I really have loved kind of the challenge of that.
Building your own racks or doing fun stuff like that. That's been what's really been fun for me.
That's been fun. Dude, I would like the one artist I work with, we typically really like to do a distorted room on his vocal.
Oh, cool.
And so typically in Cubase, I'm either automating a send or I'm like printing down audio as a throw. And I just pulled up this one song that we did where like it was a lot. And what I had done is, because we started the session in Ableton, I literally just made a rack and then just blended it in on right on the track, which is something I never would have done before, because I'm like, oh no, that's too dangerous. And then I printed it. And so I got to like I'm going through it and I'm like, you know what, that actually works. Like that works. And because my whole thing in Cubase is like I'm always printing as I go, and render in place works great, but like there's something about doing it in Ableton where like it just feels good, you know? And so I think like I'm kind of at the point where like I'll produce out the whole song in Ableton and then I take it into Cubase, and that's whenever I clean up edits and then I do all the vocal production. And it's just been awesome. I mean, it's the same thing as like whenever I have to finish in Pro Tools too. It's really no different. I'm just way faster at Cubase now.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I like to ask, because we've had a couple people be like, oh, I use Reason. Like we've had like 2 different Reason guys. Or like, I use Logic, and I always like to ask weird questions, especially when it's like not Ableton or Pro Tools, and I hear Josh talk about Cubase all the time, and I've worked with engineers that use Cubase all the time, so I've seen that more. But then like some of that stuff I just don't know. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
The coolest thing is like seeing Pro Tools like getting better with like being able to customize stuff. Because it made me getting back on Pro Tools like way easier. And then it made me realize how many things I was missing. So I would like program macros in Cubase. And so now if I'm working in Cubase or if I'm working in Pro Tools, my key commands are exactly the same. And that has been so nice. It's been so nice.
It's weird having to like jump to different languages in each DAW. I've done a little bit of work in Ableton to like kind of map some stuff in the same way as Logic or similar. Yeah. So like, like the return key in Ableton doesn't actually do anything. Like in Logic and in Pro Tools, it just like,
goes back to the beginning.
Goes back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So I mapped the / right above the return key to do to be stop, and like it's like little things like that has helped me like migrate to Ableton more. That's been great.
Dude.
I started on Ableton like early on. Like Ableton, I think it was before they had like. It wasn't really. It was before they had the current logo. They still had the weird A thing. It was back in like early college days. I think it was like 7 or 8. And yeah, it was very, very hard. But I was coming from Reason, so it was less complicated than that.
Yeah. I always started in Logic, so and then learned Pro Tools and then learned Ableton. So that was kind of my path.
Dude, I can't believe that you can't separate the two selections in Logic. I'm still hung. Well, because in Cubase, like you could have preference presets. So I have production and then I have vocal tracking. And so like my production one, if I select something, then it's like my playback snaps to it. And then on top of that, whatever track I'm selecting, it becomes armed. So then that way, like if I'm like putting in synths real quick or like recording guitars real quick, I don't have to keep arming it and disarming it. And I don't have to use a monitor track. And then in the vocal tracking preferences, it's like I can move around audio while I'm like cutting the vocal, and it won't like change where I'm recording. It won't change where playback is or anything like that.
Yeah,
because I love that workflow in Pro Tools. You know, that's like the best part about Pro Tools is you could just sit there and just keep recording while you're still editing and all that stuff.
Yeah, we were talking to a guy last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "Yeah, so while I'm cutting, I'm vocal lining my doubles, like, and doing all of that stuff at the same time. And RXing, like, at the same time.
Yeah. And I'm like, you're insane.
Yeah,
I need to see that workflow.
I know,
because,
he's a
like,
madman.
That's crazy. But
I mean, Audio Suite in Pro Tools is crazy. Whenever I do a vocal edit, I also like do some RXing and then I vocal line. And I can't imagine trying to use anything other than like Audio Suite for both of those things.
Yeah.
Like, using the plug-in vocal line is such a pain.
It's horrible. Yeah, Cubase has like audio alignment built in. I never really liked using vocal line because like I would end up doing too much and then it would get glitchy. Then I have to go back and then it was a whole thing. And
it's a massaging process with vocal line.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's just, it's whatever. I don't really like to do it that often. And finally, Cubase now lets you just time warp in the project view. So, and the transient detection is awesome. So I'll just go in, I hit 4, and then I'm able to just drag everything the way that I want it to. And it's not as like finicky as time stretching used to be in Cubase, because it used to be just like Pro Tools where you would have to put like 2 markers down or 3 markers down so you don't move the other parts, and it's very automatic now, which is so sick.
Now
and
Pro Tools has the ARA integration with Melodyne, and so you just do that inside it.
I need to get better at Melodyne.
Hey, you got the boy. I assume you're using Melodyne. You got the boy on the pod.
Yes, I am a big Melodyne guy for sure.
Yeah, I know a lot of people use Antares, like Autotune, but they use the
graph
mode
or whatever.
Yeah,
I know some people have used like the Waves Tune graphic too, but yeah, I do Melodyne. I have Melodyne Studio finally, which is great. And then I Melodyne into a very light Autotune.
I do the same thing, just to lift.
Yeah, just to like, it just gives it a little bit of polish. People are used to that, people are used to the Autotune sound whether they know it or not. So it's like, and I monitor
there is a little
with it
bit
on,
of even on EFX. I'm using EFX for mine whenever I do it. Even on EFX, there's like an EQ curve and like a small amount of compression, I think.
There's something about it. There's something about how Autotune automatically adjusts formant that makes people happy.
Yeah.
You know, because like
but
like
it
I always
literally
say,
makes it brighter. Like there's like a top end lift on it. I haven't.
Yeah,
like,
it'd be interesting to put it through like Plug-in Doctor or something. And
Yeah,
see
I
what,
need to.
see what's
I
actually
need to
going
do
on.
that. Because no, I do the same thing. So like in Cubase, I use Very Audio because I'm way faster at it than Melodyne, and so like Auto-Tune does most of the work actually. Because like Very Audio is like very, very transparent. And so like I just kind of trim off only the parts that I need to tune, and then I put them into place, and then I let Auto-Tune do the rest. And like that's been awesome. It's also been kind of great because if you want that Auto-Tune vibrato, you can kind of nudge that up a little bit, and it's just been super cool. I love it, but I really want to get better with Melodyne, just for the sake of doing so, because I've been using Pro Tools more often.
Yeah, Melodyne is great. I spend way too much time in Melodyne.
Yeah,
way more time in Melodyne than I would like to.
I bet.
But it pays great. So
yeah.
Hey man, no one wants to do it.
Exactly. We had another guy on named Clay. Oh man, I wonder. Do you know Clay Agnew?
No, I don't.
He's another vocal tuner.
Okay.
He's the guy that I normally use when I came to you and I was like, my guy's getting married. He can't do it. But he's also really good. You guys should link up. But he's fantastic. He's the same thing. He's like, I spend more time in Melodyne than I do, I think, any other software.
Yeah,
right.
He tunes for.
I've gotten very good at it.
Yeah, he tunes for a couple of our friends. But yeah, no. What? Let's go into like a more plug-in nerdy kind of like trick related conversation.
Yeah.
What is something that you've been doing lately, or something that you found lately that you have found pretty cool, or that you're stoked on, or that you're like, I found this trick, like this was pretty sick?
Right. I feel like every time this question comes up, I just talk about Soothe. I think Soothe is fun. I think it's just my favorite plugin ever. I think there aren't many plugins that do something like new. Like a lot of plugins are just like, emulating an old something analog outboard.
Mm-hmm.
Soothe is something that can only be done in DSP with like the capabilities that we have now. So that's really cool to me. But it's just amazing.
In what way are you using it?
I use it on vocals always, lead vocal. So I have like 2 just kind of set up in my mix template at all times and like already on, like not super hard. But they're there.
Are you using it as a de-esser or like mid control or what?
So the first one is kind of an upper mid control, kind of getting rid of those resonance, the harshness and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is targeting like 8K and up, which is really useful on like cheaper mics that have kind of a brittle like high end. It kind of smooths it out so that afterwards you can boost it. So that's kind of how I've been. Like my maybe Soothe hack is like soothing a certain frequency range and then boosting after Soothe. It is really, really nice because it just levels out that area and turns the harshness into more of a texture that you can bring out without it sticking out too much, and it creates it makes it much more full and like it just, and really like just satisfying. Like sometimes if you can really grab that like 1 to 3K range, soothe it in the right way, and then boost it, the way that sparkle works, like you think that it's air, but it's not. It's just like this. It like tickles your brain a little bit.
I've been kind of doing the same thing with Spectral Shaper. I never bought Soothe, but it's because Spectral Shaper like kind of ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah,
and that's been super helpful. I've been mixing demos for one of these bigger producers in town, and so he's like, "Hey, I need someone to mix like the songs I send out for pitch. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Of course, like I will do anything just to get reps in. Like that's perfectly fine." So he sends me a lot of mixes, and well, there isn't a whole lot of that in pitch.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like they aren't making money, dude. they got these crazy singers sending me 20 tracks of stacks.
Oh man,
it's like they aren't getting paid to do that.
Right.
But hopefully, and so he'll be sending me just straight from the artist. Like he doesn't even really look at the tracks. Some of them get pretty tough, man. I think I'm like 99% sure I got my first U87 AI pushed through a distorted 1073. That was crazy. That was actually insane. And it was a lot of that, just like spectral shaping and then using smooth operator, also like Soothe.
Oh yeah.
And then using Spectre to try to boost. And like it was tough, man. It was
That's what I was
tough,
gonna say is the ultimate.
It's like I'm gonna be sent records like that in the future, so I might as well
sure.
get used to it now whenever no one's gonna hear that version of the song. You know?
Yeah.
And
The ultimate fix on cheap mics is like Soothe on the top end, probably a little harder than you would normally go, and then Spectre to boost instead of an EQ.
Yeah.
Because
I also really like the Revival module in Virtual Mix Rack from Slate.
Yeah, the Revival's sick.
Really
I started
great.
using the FG36. It was actually on my Lewitt. I was recording whenever I was home for a funeral, and of course, if somebody passes away, I still have to figure out a way to get work, like the psychopath I am. And so we just did it real simple. Like the studio that I kept working out of, they didn't have like the best gear. Like I was running like a Heritage 1073 into like whatever compressor he had. His Slate Dragon wasn't even like working properly, and it had a ton of self noise, so I never used it. And then he had a stay level, which sucks as a tracking compressor, but like it works. Like it sounds cool. It beefs up the vocal. And so I was like, you know what? Like I'm just not gonna bother. And so we just went over to my homie's house and we were cutting the vocal there. And I was missing that high shelf that I was getting out of the 1073 on his vocal. And I accidentally loaded up the FG36 and I was like, this sounds
Is that
pretty
the
good.
exciter that they
like
recently?
it's like a silver face unit with like the green and red buttons.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this actually sounds pretty cool. And it ended up being on every single vocal track on that song. I was kind of surprised because I haven't really been using a ton of the Slate stuff,
I
recently
I'm a big
went
fan
back
of
to
the Slate
Custom
stuff.
Opto.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Another way I've been using Soothe lately, that has been really, really insane is the sidechain feature on Soothe. It's kind of something that you don't really think about on surface level.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of surprised they don't push it as much because it's kind of mind blowing. Like it's exactly what like Track Spacer from Waves Factory.
Yeah.
Waves,
My gosh. You just made me think about the fact that I could put that on an instrument bus and set a vocal in.
Yeah, so that's what I do. So it basically works how Waves Factory like Track Spacer should work.
Yeah.
It uses the signal from the sidechain input and like it just imprints the opposite like EQ curve onto the track that you have it on. But you still have the Soothe controls where you can do that more in certain frequency areas than others. So
instead of just everywhere. Right.
So I put it on my my instrument bus or instrument sub in my mix, and then take it pretty light, like usually in like the negative depths, so it's only taking out like maybe 2 dB here and there, like sometimes in the low mids to give the vocal a little bit more room there, and then like a little bit sometimes at like 1 to 3K where like the presence of the vocal comes through. And like the other thing that's cool is you can flip Soothe to mid side mode instead of left right. So like you can set it to where it's only taking out those frequencies in the mid, right where the vocal is sitting. So it just creates this perfect little nest for the vocal. Like
that is so smart,
dude.
Yeah.
That is so
Yeah,
smart.
it is.
I recently
it's
started
amazing.
using like the whole self-keyed thing in Pro MB, which has been really cool for vocals.
Oh, Pro MV is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about seeing if I could get the sidechain set up in a way that I could do that for like buses like that. I just haven't gotten around to it.
You see.
And
Soothe it's just the greatest plugin ever. It does everything.
Yeah,
exactly
I'm gonna have to
the way
check
you
it out
want
now.
to.
Because before, like just using Soothe is Soothe. It's like I didn't really see a value in it, but now that you're
Right.
talking about that, I think so, because that
Yeah.
has to work wonders whenever you have super static instruments like keys or organs or synths, you know? Like,
Yeah. Or
I
like
feel like that
arrangements
must
that
be
are
killer.
really beefy arrangements where like everything has a lot of low end or like low mids
Like
and like a
dense,
low mid.
and you have like
yeah,
layers
really
of
dense.
strings and synths and stuff
Right.
like that.
But
yeah.
like if you cut it all out, it loses its magic. But like you need it to go away so the vocal can come in. So like it's a more like accurate way than like just like a dynamic EQ band or something. It literally is just taking out exactly what the vocal needs to cut through in the moment when the vocal comes in.
That
And
is
then
super
once the
cool.
vocal's out, like, you know, it's back to the full mix that you had.
Jeez,
It is
bro.
That is
amazing.
super cool. That is the smartest tip that we've gotten on the podcast yet.
Wow. Really? In
That is-
70 episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude.
Wow, I'm honored.
I think you've beaten the snare trick that Aaron Pace showed us. Which oh, you want to hear that one? Josh can explain that one.
I'll hear
Alright,
the snare
so
trick.
if you take Spectre, and so if you have a snare drum that like is cool, but it doesn't like smack. I mean, any drum. We've done it on it all. It's crazy. But
It also works on bass guitars, and it also works on like vocals sometimes.
yeah,
Okay.
and 808s. But so
Yeah.
like you're gonna find the fundamental using like Pro Q or whatever.
Right.
Open up Spectre. Boost the fundamental at the highest Q possible by like 6 to 8 dB, and then you go an octave up from there on the next band, and the gain is cut in half. Same thing, and then you do it a third time, and then the third octave you could either keep it there or you could put it underneath the fundamental by an octave, and it literally sounds like you just tuned the drum better and you mic the drum better.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that on de-emphasize mode?
I think he did it on warm or something.
Well, I don't know about the de-emphasize.
I can't remember what the mode was.
Solid.
Yeah.
It was
Solid was
solid.
the mode. Okay.
Yeah, solid is like probably the best. That and like tube works too.
Yeah.
But you can also do this like if you have like a really wonky like fundamental on a drum, you can also use it to kind of make it sound like the fundamental is actually lower or higher
Oh, yeah.
because you're hearing the harmonics in it.
Right.
And so it's kind of cool. It's like a really nice way to introduce saturation in a way that like is closer to how analog gear works,
Right.
and to only hear those harmonics that you want to hear. It's really cool. But whenever he showed us it, I was at my homie Lee's house and we were trying it out on like a full drum set. And so like each time we're like, oh, it's subtle. Oh yeah, that's real nice. It's nice and subtle. And then he mixed the whole drum kit and he's like, all right, now I'm going to turn that whole row of plugins off. And he turned Spectre off on each shell. And it was like the drums lost everything that made them good.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'll have
It's
to try that
actually
out.
insane. It's really, really cool, man. It just sounds like better mics, better tuning. Like, it's so cool.
I'll have to try that out. I have a mix I'm finishing up today, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
right.
definitely
The
try it out. I took a picture of what I
snare's
was
like
doing
missing
one
something.
time.
Like I'm the vibe of this one I'm trying to hit is like the 1975 Oh Caroline drums.
Yeah.
Where, like,
Yeah.
If you've
80s
like,
pop British drums.
yeah, but like what's so interesting about that is it almost feels like the snare is missing and it like sucks you in because it's just super duper far back.
Yeah.
So that's the opposite of what I normally do. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to like dial that sound in, but it feels like it's still missing something. So
The presence.
I'll have to give that a shot.
So this kind of gives it that presence that you want back because it also makes the snare translate a lot better on like phone speakers and smaller speakers and stuff like
Right.
that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're boosting all of those you're boosting the harmonic
But
sequence.
then keep in mind, because like you're really focusing in on, the fundamental, you do get more transient with it.
Right.
But like say if like your options are like, okay, my snare's too up front or it's too much in the back, then like I would just like do a super fast attack compressor on the snare and then maybe try Spectre after
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
get
or
a
just
little bit of
dial
that
it back
feeling
slightly.
Right.
Yeah. Dude, it's super cool though.
Yeah, it's a super cool one. The other cool production trick that we learned was from Shane, which was so if you have like an acoustic song and you want to make like a cool like pad kind of thing, track the acoustic twice whenever you're doing it, and then format shift down and pitch down the second one, and then drench it in reverb and print it.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
And
I
then,
love doing stuff like that.
And then you basically sidechain the pad thing to the main guitar so that like as it peaks and ebbs and flows, it gets out of the way.
Oh, you know what? I have
pretty cool.
a new production trick, man.
Okay.
I do. And it's not even really a trick. It's just not being lazy. I am now making all of my risers by hand.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah. So round of applause for Josh for literally punching in a chord in MIDI and then punching in a pitch bend and then reversing it.
Good job, Josh.
That has been sick, dude. I'm getting the best risers in my life, dude.
I love stuff like that. Like in production, you know, I'm not doing as much production anymore, but I love using pedals for stuff.
Yeah.
And I just love just kind of exploring. There's something I heard, somebody describing production. There's a what is it? There's an architect and then there's a gardener. Have you guys heard this?
Yeah, I've heard of it in actually in a very different capacity, but it has to do with note taking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, like an architect mindset is like planning out exactly what you want and how you're going to get there, and
you like exact
having
frameworks,
a blueprint.
Exactly.
Right, like having a blueprint for the song and you know how it's going to turn out. A gardener more is like you're kind of tending a field, you're waiting for ideas to come up and you just kind of go with what's there. I think over time I've come to enjoy the like gardener production a lot more, where we don't really have like a super clear dialed in vision for the song. We just want to come in and have fun and like be creative and just see what happens. Like, okay, I'm going to record piano into the volante on full wet with the spring reverb, and then like I'm gonna run that into the mood and just like see what happens, like and then run that into the flit, and then now, you know, we wanted to have a piano sound at first, but now we have a pad, so let's go with that. Like,
yeah,
all that
like
kind of stuff. I love like getting to things in a really roundabout way because it's automatically really unique to you know, you and whoever you're working with.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
That's super sick.
I think last segment that we'll do as we're kind of landing the plane and winding down. Let's get some music recommendations from you, man. So let's get we like to listen to a bunch of stuff. Everybody's always trying to find some new stuff to listen to. So I'd like you to give us one that somebody or something that you've just been really hype on. Doesn't have to be new or anything like that. Just something that you're stoked on, and then something that you find underrated.
Okay. This is always such a tough question to me because I very much easily fall into the trap of like I work on music every day, so I'm really bad about listening to music anymore.
Yeah, same here, dude.
That's another reason why we like to do this, because it keeps everybody on like it gives a point of like, oh, you don't have to go out and search for new music. It's like, if you're listening to the podcast, here's something new to listen to.
Right. Okay. Lately, I have been revisiting my roots a little bit.
Okay.
Which is like 2015 to 2017 indie pop, or I guess more like 2013 maybe. So like I listened to Torches by Foster the People again recently. It was like that was like the first indie record I ever listened to when I was like 11 or something. Nice. And I loved it, and I didn't even know what indie pop was at that point. I've been listening to that. I listened to that, and then Spotify Radio came on after it, and then it was playing like all the stuff I listened to, like the golden age of like indie pop. Then I realized like how much I loved all of those mixes, and I just loved those songs. So I don't know, Foster the People, Temper Trap, like I don't even remember. Just all that stuff is just like golden age indie pop for me.
I saw Foster the People open for Paramore, and that was crazy in a weird
Oh,
thing.
I would love to see them. I ended up seeing. I had the opportunity to see them on the Sacred Hearts tour, but I ended up seeing Young the Giant on the Home of the Strange
Another great
tour
band
instead.
that I think is really good.
The Home of the Strange tour, Young the Giant show was probably one of the best shows I've seen still.
Dang.
My new best is Phoenix, easily.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was best show I've ever seen. What else lately? I think being funny in a foreign language is finally starting to grow on me a little bit. I really hated it when it came out.
I have songs that I like. I don't like the whole record as a whole.
Yeah, I was really bummed when it came out. I think I just really don't like Jack Antonoff like at all.
I was about to say that. I really hope that Jack Antonoff never knows who I am and he never finds out about this podcast, because I think that his productions are the most mid productions in the world. The best album by Taylor Swift is Lover. The best songs on that album are the ones that Louis Bell wrote and produced with her. That's all I'm going to say. All right. But then Midnights, the songs are good. The productions are not good. Then being funny in a foreign language, I get it. Like, the album wasn't supposed to be anything like absurdly, like, you know, incredible according to the band, but it's like, come on, man. Like, it's just not good. Okay. And I could tell that you used like either an old like U47 or some garbage mic on his voice. And I hate it. I hate how it sounds.
Well, and
Mike Crosby was the GOAT. Okay.
I totally agree with you. Like, Claro, the Immunity record.
Yeah.
One of my top 10 probably. Like, Rostam is one of my favorite producers ever. Amazing album. And then she did Sling with Jack Antonoff. I'm like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
I was like, Jack Antonoff, I feel like has a way of I don't know, taking an artist that's incredibly interesting and like unique and just making something incredibly boring with them.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened with 1975. I think I think it is finally growing on me a little bit, but it is still, I think, probably my least favorite 1975 album. Yeah. Well, quickly, I will say, as far as underrated music, there's an artist in he might not be in Nashville anymore. He might be in LA. Louis Prince. His real name is Jake McMullen. He also has stuff out under that name, but Louis Prince is like his kind of newer main project now. He produced and mixed by Micah Talks, who's another amazing producer. He has a record called 13, and it is still one of the most, like inspiring, unique records like I've ever heard. It's still top 5 probably. So definitely check that out. It does not have it doesn't have the streams it deserves at all. It's very underrated.
So real quick, Tanner, why don't you drop your socials and tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So I am pretty much only on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is tanner.ledford. I do not have TikTok. I have a Facebook technically, but who uses Facebook? And our podcast is on Spotify, wherever you listen, and our Instagram is sessionnotes.fm. So
once again, I want to say thank you to Tanner Ledford for coming and hanging out on the podcast today, my co-host Josh, and thank you, listener, for listening. We've had an influx of great listenership recently, and I want to just remind you, if you're enjoying the podcast, please give it a subscribe on your podcast player of choice or on our YouTube channel, and leave a review or drop a comment on the episode if you're finding something of value there. We super appreciate it. It helps get the podcast out to new people. And the easiest way to get that out is to share it with a friend that you might think need an episode or find it interesting. So yes, thank you so much for all you do and give us the ability to do this podcast and a reason to come on and get cool guests like Tanner, and do this weekly. So thank you very much, and we will see you guys next week. Later.